Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto had crystal release and time traveled to save everyone? Episode 1. If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, after witnessing the destruction of everyone he loved, Naruto awakens the legendary crystal release and is sent back in time with one final chance to rewrite destiny. Now, let's start. Kenji dug and dug. This seems to be very big, he thought. If I can get this crystal, all our sufferings will be gone. It was not long ago that a merchant named Kato came to their village claiming to do some fair trade with them. He had about 70 people with him, all wearing yellow cloaks with a dragon-like symbol on their back. Of course they demanded papers which he provided with delight. However, none of the villagers knew his true intention was. After a month of fair trading, he summoned the villagers in the barren field and threatened them to slaughter all of them if they refused to work for him. Now the question is, what type of work are we talking about? Mining. The villagers didn't understand at first what possibly could be under their soil. Soon they got the answer. About 3 decades ago, a large-scale battle took place near the village. A battle between Kumo, Suna and Konoha. Kumo and Suna unitedly fought Konoha's soldiers. Kumo and Suna had about 30 Jonin ninjas where Konoha had 3 Anbu and a cage-level ninja. The fight was pretty much even. Kato, as a child, witnessed the battle, which is known as the legendary Battle of Tsuki. Apparently, the cage-level ninja had some sort of bloodline ability. He could summon diamonds, rubies and crystals from thin air. During the battle he used his abilities, thus the entire area was filled with valuable stones and crystals. The fight was so intense that it reshaped the entire field. According to Kato, the valuable crystals and stones were covered by mud, stone and soil throughout the battle. After the fearsome battle ended, Kato went to the place and found a small crystal, with which he later made quite a fortune. However, he couldn't get everything out of the place. Thus, over the years he gathered ambitious followers who would help him achieve his dream, become the richest man in the world. He forced the villagers to dig for him. Man or woman, child or elderly, doesn't matter for him. All he wants is crystals. They excavated the entire battlefield and found about 5 tons of crystals. Yet, Kato was not satisfied. He believes there are still a lot more left. The villagers highly doubt that opinion after digging for months. Even most of his followers believe that nothing more is left. But for some reason, the man is adamant about the matter. But now, Kenji understands why the man was so sure about it. Yes, not much is left. But what is left is something else. Something completely superior to the stones he found earlier. He knows the true value of these crystals. These are way beyond money. A few days ago, Kenji noticed a blood-red shining object near the great banyan tree. Upon closer inspection, he discovered that it's not a small stone or crystal, rather an edge of a huge crystal. He is very fortunate that Kato or his men don't come this way very often. He is almost finished. Another half an hour, and he is done. His 2 teenage boys are on the other side of the tree, guarding. Oi, old man. Suddenly there was a shout. What are you doing there? Kenji shuddered. His sons did not signal who. Did something bad happen? Kenji decided to drop the thought for now. He looked at the source of the sound in fear. He saw a man coming from a few meters away, with a gun in his hand, a thing the villagers were very afraid of, a thing capable of ending a human life in a moment with the flick of a finger. Yes sir, he said. What were you doing here with the spade? The man stood in front of him, a foot taller than Kenji, quite intimidating indeed. Sir, you, mumbled the villager. Is that a ruby? The man rushed towards the newly dug hole. As soon as he came near, he removed the wet soil with his hands. His eyes widened in surprise. He had never seen such a big stone in the bog. The boss would be very happy to see, or A devilish smile appeared on the man's scraggly bearded face. He stroked his snout gently. He smiled to himself. Not a bad plan. Meanwhile, the old man standing behind was trembling with fear. With each passing second, he was unconsciously taking a step back. He has no idea if his sons are alive, now his fate is probably dead. Hey old man, the man addressed without turning his head back. Do you have a horse carriage? Kenji had no choice but to blame his fate. He let out a sigh. What was so important to covet? Now who knows what this guide is after he's done with him? Will he be sold in the slave market? Although Fire Country and other countries do not support slavery, people are bought and sold in the black market in a very crowded manner. He sighed again. Doesn't this thing go any faster? The thug scolded from behind him. The crystal is too heavy, sir. He simply stated. TCH. After half an hour, the man said in a slightly embarrassed tone, I need to take a leak. Stop beside that palm tree. Yes, sir. He stopped the pair of horses. The man got down from the cart and abruptly went behind a bush. Kenji looked inside the cart, and the man dropped the weapon in a hurry. This opportunity can't be missed. He gave the horses a blow of the whip. Hiya. The horses ran straight in pain and excitement. Meanwhile, the man also came out of the bushes. He was screaming loudly in anger while tying his pants. Kenji smiled a little. He had met his sons earlier. He told them to meet him at the capital, if possible. Now it seems quite possible. Suddenly an ear-splitting sound was heard from behind. For a split second, he felt a chill on his shoulder. A bullet hit him. He was falling from the horse cart in panic, somehow managed to save himself from falling. After that, another ear-splitting gunshot was heard, but the bullet did not hit him. It went inside the cart. Is that the sound of glass breaking? Kenji looks back with a trembling body only to see the man sprinting towards him with an enraged look on his face. Suddenly the man stops a good 10 meters from Kenji and raises his hand, so he is shooting him. Death. The old man closes his eyes and waits for it. Another gunshot was heard, but it never came. He opened his eyes and saw two unexpected things. 1. Small pink crystal wall between him and the goon. 2. A new figure. Who the hell do you think you are? The enraged goon's furious shout was heard. You attack an elderly man with, a soft yet stern voice spoke. What is that thing? It's called a gun. The man said in a mocking tone. With which I am gonna kill you. Very well, go ahead. Another gunshot. Impossible. Another gunshot. Another. Before the first bullet could hit him, a crystal wall materialized out of nowhere, shielding the figure from the barrage of bullets. In the end, the wall didn't even get a scratch. A 5-feet-long crystal spear materialized and started orbiting around the man in a very intimidating way. What are you? The man asked. Some call me the Godime Hokage, some call me the Crystal Sage. But I prefer Naruto Uzumaki. The spear pierced his chest. A small boy stared right in front of his father's eyes with great enthusiasm, waiting for an answer. What did you say? His father's eyes twitched. I want to go to the ninja academy, he calmly replied. But you are barely 3. The blonde man retorted. But Kashi Baka graduated at the age of 5. The redhead argued. Not happening. Minato shook his head. Why? You're 3. And Minato knows it's pointless to argue with his toddler. He should play smart. I'll admit you to the academy when you can perform, 2C rank techniques. Yes, 2C rank techniques from 2 different chakra natures. What's chakra nature? The boy frowned. It's chakra, and is this the final question? Depends on. Can't you hear me answer, old man? Hey, I am not old. Then answer me. He let out a sigh. Chakra is the life force that every believing teacher possesses. It is a mixture of spiritual and physical energy. They are called yin and yang. Using hand signs you can control the release of chakra from your body. The most common signs are boar, monkey, snake, mouse, bird, tiger and ram. There are 5 chakra natures: wind, water, fire, earth and lightning. Look at this. Minato opened a book on his table, turned a few pages and showed a picture to Naruto. You see, Minato began. Water release is stronger than fire release. However, fire release is stronger than wind release, which is stronger than lightning release. Then again, lightning release is superior to earth release, which is stronger than water release. Do you follow? There is no chakra nature that is absolute. Each has a weak point and strong point at the same time. Naruto said thoughtfully. Indeed. However, when multiple chakra natures are mixed together, there is a new form of nature that is born, which we call bloodline limit or Kekkei Genkai. Which means you can't have them unless you have them in your genes. Like the boil, dust, magnet, blaze, storm, would release, right? Yes. Unfortunately for you, neither me, nor your mom possesses such a bloodline ability. Minato said. What about mom's chains then? Aren't they some sort of bloodline ability? Not quite. Minato shook his head. You see, Uzumaki have extremely dense chakra and women are thought to have better chakra control. Hence, they can physically manifest their chakra. You get it. So I can't do that. Depends. Naruto is indeed a quick learner. Minato opened a drawer and pulled out a chakra paper. He gave it to Naruto, who stared at it curiously. Channel some chakra in it. Then I can determine what your chakra nature is. K. Naruto channeled some chakra into the paper. Perhaps too much of it, as the paper plate into 2 equal parts. One part of it became so soaked that the paper actually disintegrated into hundreds of pieces. The other part was completely covered in mud. Minato was surprised. Such high water and earth affinity is unheard of, at least not since the famed Senju brothers. Although he expected it, Kushina had a high earth and decent water affinity. He himself has wind as his secondary affinity. So I have wind, earth and water. The boy's eyes lit up. Exactly. Minato didn't bother to ask Naruto how he knew that. The boy was a genius. Now, if you excuse me, I have a mission report to write. K. Naruto jumped from the table and ran towards the door. However, he stopped for a short moment before turning back to Minato. Hey, Tu-chan. Believe this, I will make my own super cool technique and soon surpass you. He declared with fire in his eyes. Minato was stunned with such a look on his son's face. Only 2.5 years old and can already channel chakra, possess multiple chakra affinities, has the mind of an average teen and such determination. Say, son, he asked. Why do you wish to be a shinobi? What is it to you? Naruto stood there still for a moment. Then he said, a shinobi is the symbol of hope, defender of peace. He protects those precious to him and pursues his dreams by maintaining his ideals and principles. A shinobi endures pain for those around him. Shinobis hide their tears while everyone is smiling. He trades his tears, blood and soul for the sake of those who are precious to him. And to me, he paused and gave Minato a smile. My family and village are precious. Oh, Kami, Minato's eyes were on the verge of coming out of their sockets. How did you get such strong words? Only those who lived for ages and saw the ups and downs of human life can say this. Only if he knew how true he was. Naruto was sprinting across the Uchiha compound, looking for 3 certain individuals. The clan compound is quite empty, not a lot of people are awake. He headed toward the clan's training field. After a good 2 minutes of searching, he heard a familiar battle cry. He followed the noise, coming close to the Naka River bank. He found just the people he was looking for. Kashi Baka, Tobi ni. Much to everyone's annoyance, he jumped straight into the sparring circle. What do you want? Kakashi, who was still in his taijutsu stance, asked with an irritated voice. I want you to teach me 2 cool techniques. He replied with a bright face. I refuse. He dropped his stance. Why? Don't tell me because I am a child. A tick mark on his forehead appeared. More like a baby, remarked Kakashi. What did you say? Naruto asked, murder in his eyes. You don't say the B word in front of him. Rin let out a silent sigh and shook her head. Whatever, Obito shrugged, ignoring the mini Kushina. You will show me 2 cool techniques. Naruto stated. Now, why do you want to learn 2 techniques specifically? Obito closed in. Well, 2-chan said if I learned 2 C-rank techniques then he would admit me to the ninja academy. Ask someone else. Kakashi said with a frown. That wasn't a question. Sated Naruto. No. Obito ni. Sorry kiddo, he said sheepishly. I don't know many C-rank techniques, most are D or E. Those that I know are fire styles which I don't think is your affinity. Right. Rin nay. He used an unofficial A-rank technique on her puppy eyes manipulation technique. I can teach you one. She said with a smile. Wind release. Gale palm. Cool. You're the best. He gave a thumbs up. The puppy eyes manipulation technique never fails. Come here. Rin said. K. Now, in order to do this technique, you must clap your hands together with chakra. Remember to compress air with enough concentration. Like this, she demonstrated. A powerful gust of wind blew from her palms. Awesome. He began mimicking her moves. Naru-kun, wait, but it was too late. The boy clapped his hands together with compressed wind chakra and stretched out his hands. Wind release. Gale palm. What happened next stunned them all. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. However, the next moment an extremely powerful gust of wind came from the Uzumaki's palms and it was so strong that a tree in the path got uprooted and flew to the other side of the river. That was not all, the water of the river was momentarily divided, creating a good 5-meter wide path. The members of Team 7's eyes were comically wide and had their jaws hanging. Did I do it right? Naruto asked with excitement. Rin, Kakashi said. You might have just created a monster. That was no C rank and I dare to say it is at least B rank. What? Naruto jumped with excitement, his face beaming. I made a cool technique. Take that Minato Namikaze, in your face. Team Minato's sweat dropped. What are you going to name it? Rin questioned. Naruto put on a thoughtful face which caused Rin to jump and hug him tightly while squealing. Kakashi sighed. How about wind release? Devastating gale palm. Suggested Obito, pulling the poor boy out of his misery. Cool. Naruto jumped again. Uzumaki Naruto's super cool technique, wind release, devastating gale palm. It's devastating, Obito corrected him. And the tree you just busted is Uchiha's property. So unless you want to get caught in an angry Fugaku-sama's wrath, you better run. That smut-faced broody guy with an arrogant attitude. Naruto inquired. That's very specific. Obito suppressed his laughter. But yeah, that's him. Meanwhile, somewhere in the Konoha police force headquarters, a certain smut-faced broody guy with an arrogant clan head sneezed. Hey, what about the second technique? Retorted Naruto. Rin gulped. Teaching the boy another C rank. A boy who converts C rank into dangerous B or possibly a rank. That's not a very safe idea. So she suggested, why don't you ask your mom? She's a seasoned shinobi. The boy gave it a thought before his face became serious. Nah, she's too weird, even for me. What did you say? A booming voice was heard from somewhere in the background. Naruto jumped again in surprise, with an astonishing 7 feet that too. He began sweating heavily. Yo, mom, he weakly began. You see, we were just. I see everything now. A fiery red-haired woman with deep violet eyes came into view. She was wearing a green kimono and had a basket on her hands. The woman had a sweet smile on her face that was too disturbing to look at. She dropped the basket she had on her hands and ran towards the kid with blinding speed. She smacked hard on his head and began crushing him with powerful words. With each word he grew smaller and smaller in everyone's eyes. Team Minato and the raven-haired woman sweat dropped on the immature act. Her companion, a raven-haired onyx-eyed beauty, was desperately trying to hold her laughter. Kushina, the woman said. I think that's enough. What? Oh, yeah, right. Kushina sheepishly scratched the back of her head. Sorry, hee. Just lost control for a bit. Just a bit. Obito almost shouted. I thought you were going to murder him. Yes, Obito-chan. Kushina gave him a sweet smile, a bit too sweet. Nothing. He stretched a smile. Oh, Kushina showed them the basket. I have brought dango for you three. So you actually eat other things besides ramen. Kakashi, Kushina said flatly. You say something. After taking a half-hour break for food, Makoto left. As her son, Itachi, is alone in the house. Rin noticed the desperation in Naruto's eyes as he waited for his mother to leave. Rin didn't want to teach Naruto anything, it wasn't that the girl didn't like the kid. But after seeing the boy's terrifying and dangerous talent, she doesn't want to take the risk. So, she decided it was better to talk before it was too late. Anyo, she began. Kushina-san, the said woman gave her a questioning gaze. I was just wondering, did Naru-kun tell you about the agreement between him and sensei? The boy's eyes widened in shock as he registered what happened. He stopped chewing dango. What agreement? Kushina asked, half interested. Nothing, Mom. He gave her a foxy grin, causing her to frown. Dad just wants me not to read Jiraiya Oji-san's books that he keeps inside his secret box. What? Miraculously, her hair floated much like the Kyuubi itself. That man, Minato Namikaze, is a pervert. I don't know if sensei is a pervert or not, Kakashi stated sternly. But the baby is lying. What do you mean? Kushina calmed down, confusion replaced by her rage. Kakashi sighed. Minato-sensei told him he would let him admit in the academy if he masters 2 C-rank techniques from 2 separate chakra nature. Huh. Kushina turned towards Naruto only to find himself missing. She used her Uzumaki sensing ability to locate him. He was already out of the Uchiha district. That kid is fast. Wait, how can he be that fast? Obito cut her thoughts. Is it just me or he really just disappeared? I mean, no way a not yet 3-year-old can pull out body flicker technique. I think he is ready for the academy. Rin suggested, still desperate to get rid of the boy. Kushina meanwhile was fuming. Her toddler, not even 3 yet, wants to go to the academy. Does he have a death wish? Naruto Uzumaki. Get back here, you sneaky stupid little red mouse. In the end, Naruto found himself in the academy, the room bustling with the chatter of young students. When the Chunin instructor, a stern-looking man with a scar across his cheek, asked him to introduce himself, he began. I am Uzumaki Naruto, and I'm going to be the greatest Hokage this village has ever seen. Believe it. The instructor raised an eyebrow. That's it. Naruto puffed out his chest. I like ramen. A few giggles erupted from the class. And, I like purple. Okay. The instructor sighed inwardly. Really? A 2.5-year-old kid. I know Kushina was a handful, poor boy, inherited more than just her looks. Shaking his head slightly, he said, if you like purple, then sit beside Yugao, the girl with purple hair. Hi. Naruto chirped, his enthusiasm undampened as he marched over to the seat. He plopped down next to Yugao, who was quietly doodling in her notebook, her purple hair cascading over her face. Yugao glanced up, her large, curious eyes meeting Naruto's. Hi, I'm Yugao. Naruto grinned broadly. Hi, I'm Naruto. Let's be friends. Yugao blinked, surprised by his forwardness. He was a cute boy, but she had her own rules for making friends. A small smile crept onto her face. No. The boy looked sad, but she didn't bother. You just wait. You will be my friend and you will be the one who will be asking to be my friend. Believe this. The Chunin instructor watched the exchange, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Perhaps there was more to this kid than met the eye. He turned back to the class, clapping his hands to regain their attention. All right, everyone, settle down. Let's begin with today's lesson. His mother had firmly warned him not to beat someone to a pulp if they called him tomato. Sadly, the emotionally sensitive boy couldn't hold back. By midday, two older boys lay bruised and whimpering on the classroom floor, victims of Naruto's fierce temper. Detention was swiftly handed down on his very first day. When his father, Minato, heard about the incident, he was furious. The usually composed yellow flash's face turned a shade reminiscent of Kushina's infamous temper. He paced the room, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Naruto, you can't go around beating up your classmates. You have to control your temper. Naruto hung his head, kicking at an imaginary pebble on the floor. But they called me tomato, Dad. Minato sighed, his anger mingling with a touch of sympathy. That's no excuse for fighting. Words are just words, Naruto. You need to rise above them. Meanwhile, Kushina was caught in a whirlwind of emotions. She listened to Minato's reprimand, her heart swelling with conflicting feelings. On one hand, she was irate, fighting on the first day. That was unacceptable. But on the other hand, she felt a surge of pride. Her little boy had stood up to kids 4 years older than him and emerged victorious. She pulled Naruto into a tight hug, her voice a mix of sternness and affection. Naruto, that was reckless. You have to be smarter about these things. You can't just use your fists to solve problems. Naruto looked up at her with wide eyes. But, Mom, they were mean. Kushina's expression softened. I know, sweetie. But next time, try to find another way. Use your words, okay? Naruto nodded reluctantly. Okay, Mom. Within 2 months, Naruto showed incredible development. His progress astonished everyone at the academy. Despite his nearly bottomless chakra reserves, he had excellent control over it. He swiftly mastered the tree and water walking exercises, demonstrating a level of skill far beyond his years. The substitution technique became second nature to him, and he even learned advanced jutsu like water style, water bullet technique and earth style, mud wall. However, Naruto had yet to unlock the adamantine sealing chains, a powerful ability that his mother, Kushina, possessed. Minato suggested that Naruto might not have inherited it, though he seemed almost relieved about this possibility. He muttered under his breath, crazy Uzumaki genes. Naruto, always curious, caught his father's words. Dad, what do you mean by crazy Uzumaki genes? Minato chuckled, ruffling his son's hair. It's nothing to worry about, Naruto. The Uzumaki clan is known for their powerful and sometimes unpredictable abilities. Your mom's chains are a prime example. But you've got your own strengths, and that's what matters. Naruto beamed, proud of his progress and eager to learn more. I want to get even stronger, Dad. I want to be the best Hokage ever. Minato's eyes softened with pride as he looked at his son. I have no doubt you will be, Naruto. Just remember to balance your power with wisdom and kindness. That's what makes a true leader. Naruto's academic performance was anything but dull. He devoured every available source of knowledge with an insatiable hunger. He read and memorized every book on history available in the library, astonishing his teachers with his newfound understanding of the world and its events. However, his thirst for knowledge didn't stop there. Naruto often sneaked into his father's study, where he discovered a hidden chamber behind the bookshelf. When he first stumbled upon it, his eyes widened in amazement at the sight of piles of scrolls, many of which were labeled as kinjutsu, or forbidden techniques. Despite the warnings, Naruto couldn't resist the allure of these powerful jutsu. He began borrowing some of the scrolls weekly, practicing their contents in secret. His natural talent and determination allowed him to quickly grasp even the most complex sealing techniques. One evening, Minato entered his study and noticed a few scrolls slightly out of place. His eyes narrowed in suspicion. He had a good idea of who the culprit might be. Catching Naruto in the act a few days later, Minato confronted him. Naruto, these techniques are forbidden for a reason, Minato said sternly, holding up a scroll labeled, Kinjutsu. Naruto, unabashed, looked up at his father with determined eyes. But Dad, I want to learn everything I can to protect the village. How can I be the best Hokage if I don't know all the techniques? Minato sighed, torn between pride and concern. He knelt down to Naruto's level, placing a hand on his shoulder. I understand your desire to learn and protect the village, Naruto. But with great power comes great responsibility. These techniques can be dangerous, even to those who wield them. Promise me you'll be careful and that you'll come to me if you have any questions. Naruto nodded earnestly. I promise, Dad. I just want to be the best I can be. Minato smiled, ruffling Naruto's hair. I know you will be, son. Just remember, knowledge and power are important, but they must be used wisely. The true strength of a Hokage comes from their heart and their love for the village. Naruto beamed, feeling more determined than ever. Naruto's journey to master taijutsu took an unexpected turn when he encountered Maida Dai, a middle-aged genin known for his unique and intense training methods. Dai, despite never advancing beyond the rank of genin, was renowned for his extraordinary dedication to taijutsu and his creation of the Eight Gates technique. One afternoon, as Naruto was training, he noticed a man in green spandex and leg warmers, mirroring the attire of Might Guy. The man's enthusiasm was infectious as he performed vigorous exercises with a youthful energy that belied his age. Are you training for taijutsu? Naruto asked, approaching him with curiosity. Dai turned to him with a wide smile. Yes, indeed. Taijutsu is the path to unlocking the true potential of one's youth. I am Maida Dai, and I see the flames of determination in your eyes, young one. Naruto, inspired by Dai's passion, eagerly introduced himself. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I want to get better at taijutsu so I can become the greatest Hokage. Dai's eyes sparkled with excitement. A noble goal. I can teach you the fundamentals and more, if you are willing to endure the springtime of youth's rigorous training. Under Dai's guidance, Naruto's training intensified. Dai's methods were unconventional but highly effective. He emphasized the importance of pushing beyond one's limits, a philosophy that resonated deeply with Naruto. They trained together daily, with Dai sharing the secrets of the Eight Gates and instilling in Naruto a profound respect for the discipline and control required to wield such power. Dai's relentless spirit and boundless energy inspired Naruto. He learned to channel his chakra more efficiently, enhancing his physical strength and speed. Dai also taught him the importance of perseverance and maintaining a positive outlook, no matter the challenges faced. Through grueling exercises, intense sparring sessions, and endless drills, Naruto's taijutsu improved dramatically. He learned to blend his raw power with the precision and technique Dai emphasized, developing a unique style that incorporated his natural abilities and the teachings he absorbed from both Dai and Guy. The bond between Naruto and Dai grew strong, grounded in mutual respect and shared determination. Dai's lessons extended beyond physical training, imparting valuable life principles that shaped Naruto's character. Naruto began to understand that true strength came from within, from an unyielding spirit and an unwavering commitment to one's goals. By the time Naruto had mastered the basics of the Eight Gates and significantly improved his taijutsu, he had not only closed the gap in his training but also gained a mentor who profoundly impacted his growth as a ninja and as an individual. Despite not having many friends in the academy, Naruto found himself with a rival in the form of Shisui Uchiha, a promising young shinobi with remarkable talent. Shisui possessed exceptional speed, proficiency in genjutsu, and mastery in kenjutsu, making him a formidable opponent despite his age. However, Naruto's abilities set him apart in a league of his own. His relentless determination, vast chakra reserves, and mastery of various jutsu made him a force to be reckoned with. Recognizing Naruto's skill and potential, Shisui decided to mark him as a milestone to surpass. He saw Naruto not just as a rival, but as a benchmark for his own growth and development as a shinobi. The rivalry between Naruto and Shisui fueled both of their ambitions, driving them to push themselves to greater heights in their training and missions. Each encounter between them became a test of skill and determination, with both shinobi striving to outdo the other. Despite their rivalry, there was a mutual respect between Naruto and Shisui. They admired each other's strengths and learned from their battles, each pushing the other to improve. In the end, Naruto graduated from the academy at the age of 3 with distinction, shattering all records that had ever existed before, surpassing legends like Tobirama, Hiruzen, Orochimaru, Minato, and Kakashi. In a meeting of the clan heads, Shikaku Nara dubbed the boy as the ultimate prodigy. However, neither his mother nor his father was pleased with his brilliance. "You cannot promote him as a shinobi," Kushina said threateningly, her eyes slitted, Kyuubi's chakra leaking from her form. "I understand your concern," Hiruzen Sarutobi said, unfazed by the killing intent radiating from Kushina. "The war is not in our favor, and we need as many capable soldiers as we can gather." "But that is not a good choice," Minato said calmly, not supporting Kushina's rough behavior but not exactly stopping her either. "Trust me, it is a good choice," Hiruzen insisted, taking a puff from his pipe. Kushina's fury intensified. "Where was your right choice when our village was being destroyed and the Konoha shinobi never arrived to aid us? Are you suggesting that letting my village be destroyed was a good choice? You are crossing the line, Jinchuriki of Konoha," Hiruzen said authoritatively. He pulled a piece of paper from the table and held it up. "Naruto Uzumaki is now a shinobi under my command." Kushina was on the verge of attacking the man when Minato interjected, "If that's final, then how about I suggest something?" "What is it?" Kushina asked impatiently. "Do tell," Hiruzen said, curious. "How would you like to be a Junin sensei, Kushi-chan?" Minato proposed. Kushina's fiery aura subsided slightly as she considered the idea. "You want me to train him?" she asked, her tone a mix of surprise and contemplation. "Yes," Minato said, meeting her gaze steadily. "Who better to guide him than you? You know his strengths and weaknesses better than anyone. You can ensure he's not only trained to the highest standards but also protected." Hiruzen nodded thoughtfully. "That could work. Kushina, your skills and experience would be invaluable in shaping Naruto's development. You could ensure he remains grounded and safe." Kushina's eyes softened as she looked at her son, who stood nearby, listening intently. She sighed deeply, the anger in her eyes replaced by determination. "All right, but on one condition." "Name it," Hiruzen said. "You must promise that he will not be sent on dangerous missions until he's older and more prepared," Kushina demanded. Hiruzen nodded. "Agreed. He will receive the best training under your guidance, and his missions will be carefully selected." Kushina finally relented, her fierce protectiveness giving way to a sense of resolve. "Then it's settled. I'll be Naruto's Junin sensei. Team 10 will consist of Naruto Uzumaki, Yugao Uzui, and Cholo Akamichi under Junin. Team 10. A red blur appeared as Sensei said, "Kushina Uzumaki. Ichiraku ramen in a minute." "Mom." Kushina Uzumaki grinned broadly, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Yep, Naruto. And we're gonna make Team 10 the best team ever, Databane." Naruto blinked, unable to process the whirlwind of emotions. Excitement, confusion, and a hint of embarrassment all mixed together. "But, Mom." Before he could finish, Yugao Uzui, a quiet, stoic kunoichi, raised an eyebrow. Interesting, she murmured, her curiosity piqued by the unexpected turn of events. Cholo Akamichi, munching on a bag of chips, didn't seem to mind the chaos. Munch, munch. Kushina clapped her hands, her energy contagious. All right, team, let's meet at Ichiraku Ramen in 1 minute. We've got a lot to discuss. As they began to leave, a shadowy figure watched from the rooftops, their eyes narrowing. So, she's leading Team 10. This changes everything. Naruto caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of his eye but dismissed it, too wrapped up in his thoughts. There have been countless pivotal events throughout history. Excluding the Great Wars themselves, several battles have changed the course of history. The Battle of Kanobi Bridge. The Kyuubi Rampage in the Leaf Village. The birth of Crystal Cemetery. The Battle of Tsuki. The Battle of Two Uzumakis in the Leaf. However, one key battle altered the balance of the world. The Battle of Hiko. It was a time of great turmoil, when the very fabric of existence seemed to tremble under the weight of conflict. Nations clashed, alliances crumbled, and heroes rose and fell like shooting stars in the night sky. But that was the first time humans were utterly left stunned by the beautiful and horrifying combination of natural talent, hard work, and divine blessing. This was the battle that introduced the term unfair to the world. The day when a tailed beast was defeated and humiliated by a child. The war was raging, and typically, the Hokage did not participate directly in battle. But Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, stood tall amidst the chaos, his presence a beacon of hope for the weary warriors who fought by his side. They had been locked in a fierce struggle with the forces of Kumo, their strength waning with each passing moment. They were down to the last bit of their stamina. I guess this is it, Sensei. Jiraiya, the legendary Sannin, panted, his once mighty form now weary and battered from hours of relentless combat. Unfortunately, Hiruzen began, his voice heavy with resignation, but then they heard it. Sage art. Crystal release. True. The words hung in the air like a death knell, carrying with them a sense of awe and dread. And then, the battlefield erupted in a dazzling display of light and sound as Naruto Uzumaki, a boy of unparalleled courage and determination, unleashed his power upon the world. It was the day when people saw Naruto Uzumaki not as a child, but as one who had far surpassed legends. The Battle of Hiko would be remembered for generations to come as a turning point in history, a moment when the impossible became possible and the world was forever changed. And at the heart of it all stood Naruto Uzumaki, a boy who had risen from humble beginnings to become an angel. Naruto and his future teammates, Yugao Uzui and Cholo Akamichi, found themselves standing outside Ichiraku Ramen. Kushina Uzumaki had dragged them there, herding them like hyperactive kittens. The mouth-watering aroma of ramen wafted through the air, making their stomachs grumble loudly, but their focus was entirely on Kushina's stern expression. Are we getting a super cool mission, Mom? Naruto asked, practically vibrating with excitement. Sensei, Kushina corrected, her eyes narrowing like she was trying to set him on fire with a look. Huh. Don't call me Mom. Call me Sensei. Naruto's eyes went wide as saucers. You're disowning me. Kushina facepalmed so hard it echoed. What? No. Just call me Sensei when we're in a team setting. Oh, Naruto said, nodding like one of those bobblehead dolls. That makes sense. Yugao piped up, trying to suppress a giggle. Does this mean we have to call you Mom, too? Kushina's eyes twitched. No, just Sensei for everyone. Cholo, mid-chew on a rice ball he snuck in, looked puzzled. Wait, can we call you Ramen Boss instead? Kushina's stern facade cracked, and she burst out laughing. You can call me Sensei or Ramen Boss, but nothing else. Naruto grinned. Alright, Ramen Boss. So what's our mission? Are we infiltrating a secret ramen recipe vault? Yugao laughed. Or rescuing dumplings from evil ninjas? Cholo, still munching, added, maybe we're guarding the village's noodle supply. Kushina sighed, shaking her head but smiling. You three are hopeless. Let's start with not embarrassing me in public, and then we'll see about those missions. Cholo, scratching his head, interjected. Anyways, sensei, you were saying. Kushina cleared her throat, her tone turning serious. You guys aren't officially ninja yet. What do you mean? Naruto asked, his confusion mirrored by Yugao and Cholo. Kushina's lips curled into a mischievous, almost sadistic grin. You need to pass a test first. And that test is, pranking the Hokage. The trio froze, their jaws practically hitting the ground. What? Yugao and Cholo exclaimed in unison, their voices echoing down the street. Naruto's heart pounded, his mind spinning. That's so disrespectful. He blurted out, unable to comprehend the challenge. Kushina crossed her arms, her expression unyielding. If you don't complete this task, you fail and go back to the academy. No exceptions. The weight of her words settled heavily on them. Cholo's usual appetite for snacks seemed to vanish, and Yugao's confident stance faltered. They exchanged heavy sighs and shared looks of frustration. Naruto finally broke the silence. All right, let's do it. We don't have a choice. With reluctant nods and grim determination, they accepted the challenge, understanding that their dreams of becoming ninja hung in the balance. As they walked away from Ichiraku, Naruto couldn't help but grumble. This is crazy. Pranking the Hokage. What are we, suicidal? Yugao tried to lighten the mood. Hey, at least it's not a written test. I'd rather prank the Hokage than sit through another one of Iruka-sensei's lectures. Cholo, still looking pale, muttered, I'd rather fight 100 rogue ninjas than do this. At least then I'd know what I'm up against. They stopped in front of the Hokage's office, staring at the imposing building. Naruto scratched his head. So, what's the plan? Who's got an idea that won't get us thrown in a dungeon? Yugao smirked. How about a classic? We swap out the Hokage's paperwork with pictures of ramen. Cholo shook his head. No way. He'd know it was us in a second. We need something sneaky, something ninja-like. We should trick separately first. Yugao suggested. Cholo nodded, finally looking excited. All right, let's do it. For our ninja dreams. Determined to prove himself, Cholo decided to go first. He thought hard about his plan, finally settling on a clever disguise. He donned an old, tattered robe and applied some makeup to look older. With a steaming bowl of miso soup in hand, he confidently approached the Hokage's office. Inside, the Hokage sat at his desk, reviewing important documents. Cholo knocked softly, then entered, bowing deeply. Hokage-sama, I brought this for you, he said, his voice shaky but sincere. I think you're doing an excellent job maintaining the peace. The Hokage looked up, his eyes narrowing slightly. He recognized the boy instantly but chose to play along. How kind of you, he said with a knowing smile. Please, have a seat and join me. Cholo's heart pounded as he sat down. The Hokage pushed the bowl of soup toward him. It's only fair that you share it with me, he insisted. Cholo hesitated but had no choice. He took a spoonful, his eyes widening as the intense heat hit his tongue. The soup was loaded with chilies and spices, far too much for him to handle. Tears streamed down his face as he struggled to finish, the Hokage watching with an amused glint in his eyes. Defeated, Cholo fled the office, his mouth on fire, his plan a complete failure. Naruto and Yugao waited outside, eyes wide as Cholo stumbled out, gasping for air and chugging water from his canteen. What happened? Naruto asked, barely able to contain his laughter. Cholo's face was red and puffy, his voice hoarse. That soup was like drinking liquid lava. He knew it was me the whole time. Next was Yugao. She decided on a more direct approach, banking on the element of surprise. She took a deep breath and burst into the Hokage's office, her face contorted with panic. The village is under attack. She screamed, pointing out the window. The Hokage, more experienced and cunning than she anticipated, saw through her ruse immediately. As the Hokage, I cannot leave you kids here in this unsafe soon-to-be battleground. Therefore, with a swift hand sign, he transported her to the top of a high tower in the village. Yugao stood there, the wind whipping around her, her eyes wide with shock and fear. She had no idea how to get down. As she looked over the edge, her legs trembling, she realized just how outmatched she was. Another failed attempt. From below, Naruto and Cholo watched as Yugao's tiny figure appeared at the top of the tower. Oh boy, Naruto muttered, rubbing the back of his head. This isn't going well. Yugao's voice, small but frantic, reached their ears. Get me down from here. Cholo sighed. Great, now what? Naruto grinned. We get creative. Let's use some teamwork. Cholo, you ready to play catch? Cholo's eyes widened. You want me to catch her? Are you nuts? Hey, you're the strongest one here, Naruto pointed out. Yugao, can you make it to the edge safely? Yugao, clutching the edge of the tower, glared down at them. You better catch me, Cholo, or I swear. With a deep breath, she jumped, arms flailing. Cholo positioned himself below, bracing for impact. She landed hard in his arms, knocking the wind out of him, but he managed to stay on his feet. Naruto ran over, grinning. Nice catch. Now, let's regroup. Yugao straightened up, dusting herself off. Okay, maybe that wasn't my best idea. Your turn, Naruto. Naruto nodded, determined not to let his team down. He grabbed a stack of papers and a bucket of glue, hatching his most devious scheme yet. Minutes later, Naruto burst into the Hokage's office, panting dramatically. Hokage-sama. Urgent documents from the academy. The Hokage looked at Naruto, amused. And what do you need me to do with them? Naruto, feigning seriousness, handed the stack over. Just your signature, sir. The Hokage took the papers, only to find his hands covered in glue. He sighed, shaking his head with a smile. Nice try, Naruto. Then, poof. It was a shadow clone. Naruto's face fell as he realized that individual efforts were doomed to fail against the cunning Hokage. He quickly regrouped with Yugao and Cholo, who were both dejected and disheartened. We need to work together, he said determinedly, his eyes shining with resolve. We have to come up with a plan that combines our strengths. It's our only shot. Yugao and Cholo exchanged weary looks but nodded in agreement. They huddled together, brainstorming ideas and pooling their skills. They knew this was their last chance to prove themselves, and they couldn't afford to fail. They needed something smaller yet clever enough to catch the Hokage off guard. After brainstorming for a while, they came up with a new, more reliable plan. Cholo would create a distraction by talking with the guards. Yugao, leveraging her stealth, would prepare a bouquet of flowers laced with harmless but irritating pollen that induces sneezing. She would disguise herself as a courier from a renowned flower shop and deliver the bouquet to the Hokage, claiming it was a gift from a foreign dignitary. Naruto would be in charge of ensuring that the Hokage's usual routines were subtly altered, making it seem like the village council had organized the delivery as a token of appreciation. This way, the Hokage would not suspect the prank. With their plan set, they moved into action. Yugao, dressed as a professional courier, approached the Hokage's office with a large, beautifully arranged bouquet. She gave the receptionist a smile. This is for Hokage-sama. These flowers are a gift from the land of flowers as a token of their esteem, she said, bowing slightly. The woman nodded. I shall make sure he gets it. Yugao bowed once more and left. The receptionist carried the flowers to the Hokage and informed him about it. The Hokage, intrigued but cautious, accepted the bouquet. Thank you, he said, taking a moment to appreciate the flowers before placing them on his desk. As the Hokage continued his work, the pollen from the flowers began to take effect. Within minutes, he started sneezing uncontrollably. Achoo! Achoo! He tried to maintain his composure, but the sneezing fits only got worse. Cholo, who had been observing from a hidden vantage point, signaled to Naruto and Yugao. The three of them watched, trying to stifle their giggles as the Hokage sneezed uncontrollably. The Hokage inspected the bouquet more closely and discovered the pollen. He chuckled, impressed by the harmless yet effective prank. All right, you three, he called out, knowing exactly who the culprits were. Show yourselves. Naruto, Yugao, and Cholo stepped forward, grinning sheepishly. The Hokage looked at them with a mix of amusement and respect. You managed to prank me without causing any real harm. Well done. You've shown creativity and teamwork. Welcome to the ranks of the ninja. Later, at Ichiraku Ramen, Kushina joined them. You three did well, she said, ruffling Naruto's hair. But remember, more challenges await. Naruto grinned, slurping his ramen noisily. Bring it on, sensei. We're ready for anything. Cholo, still flushed from the spicy soup incident, added with a laugh, as long as it doesn't involve hot soup, I'm in. Yugao, finally relaxed after her harrowing experience on the tower, smiled confidently. Yeah, we can handle whatever comes next. Together. Kushina watched them with pride. That's the spirit. Just remember, as ninja, you'll need to rely on each other and think on your feet. Today was a small taste of what you'll face, but I have no doubt you'll all grow into fine shinobi. They all raised their bowls of ramen in a toast, the camaraderie and determination clear in their eyes. The trio knew that this was just the start of their journey, and they were ready to tackle whatever came their way, as a team. Those were the best times. Pranking the Hokage is a test and all. How long has it been? It feels like yesterday when he came out of that cave after drinking the nectar of the fruit. He wondered if Yugao had a kid. She always seemed to be obsessed with that boy with lung problems. She had promised that he would be her children's godfather. I am physically a teenager, I wonder if they are older than me. He turned to the old man driving the cart. Hey, old man, Naruto began, voice low and thoughtful. How long has it been since the nine-tailed fox attacked the Hidden Leaf village? The old man, face etched with deep lines, shrugged. Couldn't tell ya. But it's been over 20 years since the Fourth Great Shinobi War. Naruto sighed, thinking about the wars. A fourth one, huh? Naruto stared at the apple tree by their cart, his gaze distant. The apples were ripe, but he wasn't interested. His mind was somewhere darker. Who's the Hokage now? The old man's face darkened. The eighth was murdered 3 years ago, he said quietly, as if speaking louder might make it worse. The acting Hokage is Nara, I think. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Who was the eighth? The old man hesitated, shifting uncomfortably on his seat. Why do you hesitate? Naruto's tone was sharp, demanding. It's Menma Uzumaki. Naruto froze. Silence hung heavy in the air. Suddenly, birds erupted from the trees, filling the sky, scattering in fear. Naruto's killing intent surged, palpable and intense. The old man's face turned ashen. His body trembled, and then he bent over and vomited, barely holding onto consciousness. Who was it? Naruto's voice was cold, almost deadly, the air around him thick with menace. What? The old man's voice trembled. Who killed Menma? Naruto demanded, his voice like ice, freezing the old man in place. The old man swallowed hard, his fear almost tangible. I think it was someone named Boruto. Boruto. Naruto repeated the name slowly, testing it on his tongue. His eyes darkened, and his aura grew even more oppressive. Is he alive? Maybe, they never found him. Naruto clenched his fists, his knuckles white. The killing intent around him was suffocating, the old man could barely breathe. The first thing Naruto planned to do after freeing the old man's village from this Kato was to avenge his brother. No one would stand in his way. In the annals of the shinobi world, there are moments that shine like beacons, illuminating the path of honor and glory. The Sage of Six Paths defeated the Ten Tails, sealing away the monstrous beast that threatened to devour the world. Hashirama Senju, with his unparalleled wood release, ending the clan warring period and founding the village of Konohagakure, bringing a semblance of peace to a fractured land. Menma Uzumaki, a hero who stood tall against the infinite Tsukuyomi, saving the world from eternal illusion and darkness. However, history is not always filled with glorious events. There are shadows that lurk behind the legends. Madara Uchiha, once a co-founder of the Leaf, turning traitor and wreaking havoc with his insatiable lust for power. Minato Namikaze, the Yellow Flash, whose brilliance on the battlefield was matched only by the darkness of his deeds, massacring thousands of shinobi alone in a single night. Itachi Uchiha, a prodigy who carried the weight of his village on his shoulders, yet chose to slaughter his own clan to prevent a greater catastrophe, becoming a pariah in the eyes of many. These were hidden stories. Tales whispered in the dead of night, known but unspoken. The villagers knew, but they refused to discuss them openly. Thus, the future generations grew up, ignorant of the harsh realities that had shaped their world. Papa, who is the strongest shinobi? A child might ask, eyes wide with curiosity and admiration. The father, an elder who had seen much, would hesitate. It's Lord Eighth, of course, he would finally say, avoiding the truth. People who were old enough during the Third Great Shinobi War always knew who the strongest shinobi was. His name was like a taboo, a secret locked away in the depths of their hearts. They never spoke of him to their children, not wanting to glorify a figure so steeped in blood and controversy. Strongest is an influential word, and no parent would want their child to follow in the footsteps of a mass murderer. Yes, he crippled the Four Tails with a single blow, a feat unheard of. Yes, he seemingly knocked out the Nine Tails with a punch, a testament to his unimaginable strength. Yes, he fought for his village with a ferocity that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. But he was also a man who annihilated armies alone, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. He, who killed innocents out of anger, his rage unchecked and unforgiving. His hands, stained with the blood of countless lives, were a stark reminder of the cost of his power. It's no wonder they never looked for him when he had gone missing for decades. His disappearance was almost a relief, a way for the village to distance itself from his fearsome legacy. That was the fifth Hokage. Known in hushed tones as the Crystal Sage for his unique and devastating techniques. He was revered and feared in equal measure, the embodiment of the phrase, absolute power corrupts absolutely. The strongest shinobi in history. Naruto Uzumaki. He was a legend, a myth, a cautionary tale. His story was one of greatness and downfall, a narrative of heroism marred by darkness. He was a man who had saved the village and the world, yet in doing so, had lost himself. His name was etched in the chronicles of the shinobi world, a name that commanded respect and dread. The young ones grew up idolizing the heroes they were told about, blissfully unaware of the complex, tragic figure who had once stood at the pinnacle of power. Naruto Uzumaki's legacy was one of contrasts, a blend of light and shadow that would forever haunt the history of the shinobi world. Mommy skipped along the village path, clutching a bag of fresh fish her uncle had given her. Take this to Makoto-sama, he had said, and Mommy nodded brightly, eager to complete her errand. She entered the Uchiha clan head's house, her excitement mingling with curiosity. As she approached the garden, a high-pitched voice broke the serene ambiance. Why are we doing this, Mom? Mommy paused, her eyes widening as she peeked around the corner. People are dying out there. We must end the war, believe this. In the garden, 3 kids were reluctantly cutting the overgrown grass with kunai. The girl had dark purple hair and was struggling to keep up. The older boy was notably chubby, huffing and puffing with every movement. The youngest boy, not much older than mommy herself, had bright red shoulder-length hair that glinted in the sunlight. Now my son has become a student, a woman's voice floated from inside the house. If you wish to go to war, then you must complete a bunch of D-rank missions first. They'll help you improve your teamwork, increase your. Yeah, the boy said dryly, rolling his eyes. Their teacher, a woman with fiery red hair, frequently glanced at them while chatting and sipping tea with Makoto Uchiha. Despite her relaxed demeanor, her eyes were sharp, ensuring her students were hard at work. The children, however, were visibly exhausted, wiping sweat from their brows and rubbing their aching backs. Sensei, panted Cholo, the chubby boy. Why don't you come and help us? The woman smirked mischievously. Maybe I don't wanna. No fair. Cholo protested, his face turning redder. The red-haired boy paused and said, Yugao, Cholo, can you guys step back real quick? Why? The girl, Yugao, frowned. Just wanna test something, the boy replied, determination shining in his eyes. What? Cholo asked, confused. Just step back, will ya? He insisted. Fine. They both stepped back reluctantly. The boy held his hand in a half-rammed seal and announced, Wind release. Cleave. Mommy watched in awe as a gust of wind erupted from his hand, slicing through the tall grass effortlessly. The lawn was now perfectly trimmed, the cut grass fluttering down like confetti. What the hell was that? Cholo's eyes were as wide as saucers. I did it. The boy's face lit up with a wide grin. Look, Oka-chan, I perfected it. I am a genius. A woman with long, fiery red hair, a mirror image of the boy, stepped out of the house. Well, congratulations Naru-kun, she remarked proudly, her grin matching his. Then her face turned serious. But what did I tell you about calling me that? Sensei. The boy asked, his enthusiasm dimming slightly. Much better. She ruffled his hair affectionately. Now, I told you not to use these tricks in small-scale missions, didn't I? But Oka, sensei, they are so easy and fast. Why shouldn't I use them? Listen, Naru-kun, she knelt down to him, her tone gentle yet firm. If there is an easy way to do something, it doesn't mean that you have to do it every time. Using these tricks too much makes people dependent on you. What will happen when you are not around? D ranks are for teamwork development, making you adjust to annoying work. Huh. Yugao jumped between them, pointing at Kushina Uzumaki. So you do agree these things are silly and annoying? Right, sensei. Etta, Kushina scratched the back of her head sheepishly. Miko-chan. Makoto stepped out, her raven hair shining in the sun, her onyx eyes sparkling. She wore an elegant kimono and had a smile that exuded calm and grace. I think we are done. So, Yane. Kushina disappeared in a puff of smoke, waving her hand. Closet sadist, Cholo muttered, nodding. No offense Naruto-kun, but she really is a sadist. Yugao folded her arms across her chest. None taken. Naruto waved his hand dismissively. He turned to Makoto, bowing respectfully. Aunt Mick, Uchiha-san, we should take our leave. Come on, Naru-kun, Makoto giggled. You don't need to be so formal. The boy sighed, then bowed again and left with his teammates. Mommy-chan, Makoto called, startling the hiding girl. Mommy made an eek sound, her face turning as red as a Sharingan. Come out now. Mommy stepped out, her head bowed. Etta, she hesitated. I was just watching us. No matter. What brings you here? Right. Mommy quickly handed over the bag of fish, completing her errand. As she was about to leave, she looked back at Makoto, curiosity getting the better of her. Makoto-sama. Hi. What did that boy do? Oh, you mean Naruto-kun. Mommy nodded. Well, that's his own style. He made it all by himself. I don't know much about it, but it took him quite some time to create it. He must be really smart then, Mommy said in wonder. Makoto grinned widely. What is this? Does little Mommy Chan have a crush? Oh, of course not. Mommy stammered, her face burning. Bowing once more, she quickly left, her mind swirling with thoughts of the amazing red-haired boy she had just seen. Present. Stepping out of the cart, Naruto surveyed the desolate village. The once bustling settlement was now a wasteland of ruins and despair. There were deep pits and tunnels scattered everywhere, signs of extensive excavation for crystals. Forced laborers, bent and broken by their burdens, moved like ghosts under the oppressive watch of thugs employed by a rich man named Kato. The crystals being mined were ones Naruto had created years ago, now a curse on the land. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he saw an older man, about 50, struggling under the weight of a heavy sack of mud. The man staggered, then fell, the contents of the sack spilling onto the ground. A bald thug, whip in hand, rushed over, ready to strike the exhausted laborer. In an instant, Naruto appeared between them, effortlessly knocking the thug to the ground with a swift, powerful strike. The whip fell from the thug's hand, useless. Naruto bent down, helping the older man to his feet. Are you all right? He asked, his voice calm but filled with concern. The man, trembling and barely able to stand, looked at Naruto with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. Thank you for helping me, he managed to say. But, who are you? A gust of wind blew, lifting Naruto's cloak hoodie from his head. His fiery red hair and intense violet eyes were revealed, catching the light and shimmering with an otherworldly glow. The man's eyes widened in shock and recognition. You're. Naruto nodded solemnly. Yes. I am Naruto Uzumaki, the one who created these crystals. And I'm here to make things right. After completing D-rank after D-rank missions, Team 10 finally stood in front of the Hokage. The children were visibly frustrated and eager for something more challenging. Naruto was the first to break the silence. Old man, we're tired of these useless, mundane tasks. We want something exciting and dangerous. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, looked at the group with a grandfatherly smile, his pipe clutched between his teeth. He turned his gaze to their sensei, Kushina Uzumaki, silently asking if they were ready for a higher-level mission. She gave a silent nod. All right, calm down, Hiruzen said, holding up a hand. Let's see what we have here. He began to sift through the stack of mission scrolls on his desk. Cholo was munching chips loudly, his eyes wandering around the room as if searching for something interesting. Yuago's eyes were twitching in irritation, her arms crossed over her chest. Naruto was tapping his foot impatiently, while Kushina lazily checked her nail polish, seemingly unfazed by the chaos around her. The previous month had been filled with particularly annoying D-rank missions. They had spent one grueling day chasing a rogue cat named Tora, which always seemed to slip through their fingers at the last moment. Another mission involved scrubbing the graffiti off the Hokage monument, a task made more tedious by Naruto's complaints about how he should be the one having his face carved into the stone someday. And just last week, they had been assigned to babysit a group of rowdy children who ended up tying Cholo to a tree and pelting Yuago with mud balls. Finally, Hiruzen found what he was looking for. He picked up a red scroll and looked at them dramatically. I have a mission for you, he announced. You are to take this message to the daimyo of the Land of Fire's palace. Naruto's eyes lit up with excitement. We'll take it, old man. This is the kind of mission we've been waiting for. Cholo's chips fell to the floor as he jumped up. Finally, something interesting. Yuago's stern expression softened into a grin. I'm ready for this, she said, cracking her knuckles. Even Kushina seemed pleased, a proud smile spreading across her face. Looks like we're in for an adventure, she said. Hiruzen handed the scroll to Kushina. Remember, this is an important mission. The message must reach the daimyo safely. We won't let you down. Naruto declared, practically bouncing on his feet. After leaving the Hokage's office, Kushina turned to her team. We'll meet at the northern gate of the village at 7 a.m. tomorrow sharp. Don't be late. The trio nodded enthusiastically before heading to their respective homes. Back at home, Naruto was practically jumping in the living room. A real mission. This is going to be awesome. He shouted, doing a little dance. Kushina, who was cooking stew in the kitchen, looked over her shoulder. Naruto, you need to be vigilant during the mission. Don't do anything stupid, Databane. Naruto crossed his arms and pouted. I'm not going to do anything stupid, Datbeo. You're the one who always gets into trouble. Kushina turned off the stove and walked into the living room, her hands on her hips. Me. You're the one who once tried to fight a squirrel because you thought it was an enemy ninja. That squirrel was suspicious, Datbeo. Naruto shot back, grabbing a pillow from the couch and throwing it at her. Kushina caught the pillow effortlessly and tossed it back at him. Just promise me you'll be careful, okay? Naruto grinned. I promise, Mom. We're going to complete this mission and make you proud. Just then, the front door opened, and Minato Namikaze walked in. I'm home, he started to say, but was abruptly cut off when a frying pan, thrown by Kushina in the heat of the moment, hit him square on the head, knocking him out cold with a thud. Naruto's eyes widened in horror. Mom, you killed Dad. Kushina's face turned pale. No, I didn't. It was an accident. I'm an orphan and you're a widow now. Naruto wailed, running around in circles. Oh no. But I'm only 23. Kushina exclaimed, wringing her hands. I'm not even a. Will we be arrested for killing him? Naruto asked, pausing his frantic running. Maybe, Kushina replied, looking genuinely worried. Should we hide the corpse? What happened? Minato groaned, slowly sitting up and rubbing his head. He's alive. Naruto shouted, relief washing over him. I am what? Minato asked, confused and still dazed. Nothing, Dad. Naruto said quickly. I'm cooking, don't disturb me, Databane. Kushina huffed, marching back to the kitchen, leaving a bewildered Minato and a relieved Naruto in her wake. The next day, Team 10 finally assembled at the northern gate of the village hidden in the leaves. Yuago was already there, her backpack securely strapped on, a small katana hanging at her side. Cholo stood beside her, munching on an apple and looking eager. Kushina and Naruto arrived a few minutes later, with Kushina leading the way and Naruto bouncing with excitement. Kushina looked at her team with a serious expression. Listen up. This mission is important. We're delivering a very crucial scroll to the Lord of the Land of Fire. There's a war going on, and we can't let this scroll fall into enemy hands. Be careful, stay vigilant, and stick together. Yuago and Cholo nodded in understanding, while Naruto pumped his fist in the air. We're going to be unstoppable, Datbeo. He yelled. With that, they started their journey. They sprinted through the woods, leaping from tree branch to tree branch. The trees of the village hidden in the leaves were gigantic, towering over the landscape like ancient guardians. These trees were a testament to the power of the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, who created the forest around the village and in many areas of the Land of Fire using his unique wood release jutsu. The dense canopy provided a natural defense and a perfect environment for the village's shinobi to train and travel stealthily. Hashirama's wood release was truly a marvel of creation, so amazing that it stunned the world when it first appeared. The power to subdue tailed beasts, it still awed the world. Till this date, people cannot help but wonder how strong the man truly was. Little did they know that they would be soon witnessing the era of collapse, the time when power scales broke the chart. As they moved through the forest, they saw a group of hidden cloud shinobi resting in a clearing below. Kushina motioned for silence and whispered, "Be stealthy. We can't afford a confrontation." The team moved with precision and caution, their movements barely disturbing the leaves around them. They circled around the clearing, keeping a safe distance from the foreign ninjas, and continued their journey once they were out of sight. As night fell, they found a suitable spot to rest. They set up their tents, with Yuago and Kushina sharing one, while Naruto and Cholo shared the other. Cholo, eager to surprise his team, wandered off to a nearby pond and returned with 2 gigantic fishes he had caught. "Look what I got!" Cholo exclaimed, holding up the fishes proudly. Naruto's eyes widened. "Whoa, Cholo! How did you catch those?" Cholo grinned. "A secret Akamichi technique," he said with a wink. They cooked the fish over a campfire and took turns keeping watch throughout the night. At dawn, they packed up and continued their journey. 3 days later, they finally arrived at the palace of the Lord of the Land of Fire. The palace was an impressive structure, surrounded by high walls and guarded by vigilant soldiers. The grandeur of the place was evident in its intricate designs and the sheer scale of the buildings. The guards at the gate stopped them. "State your business and present your certification." Kushina handed over the mission scroll and their documents. The guards scrutinized them, then one of them went inside. After about 10 minutes, he returned and told them to wait. Kushina was soon summoned by the Lord. "Wait here in the guest room," she instructed the kids. "I'll be back shortly." However, the children's curiosity got the better of them, and they began to explore the palace. The palace was breathtakingly beautiful, with vast hallways adorned with paintings and tapestries, elegant furniture, and lush gardens. The floors gleamed with polished marble, and the ceilings were adorned with intricate frescoes. They wandered into a courtyard with a stunning pool. The water was crystal clear, reflecting the surrounding flowers and trees. Just as Naruto was about to dip his hand into the pool, a boy, around 6 or 7 years old and older than Naruto, appeared, wearing elegant clothes. "You shouldn't be touching the pool," the boy said haughtily. Naruto frowned. "Why not? It's just water, Datbeo." The boy smirked. "Because I'm the son of the Lord, and you should respect your seniors." Naruto's eyes narrowed. "I'll only respect you if you've done something to earn it, not just because you're writing on your father's name." Everyone was stunned by Naruto's bold statement. The boy looked taken aback, clearly not used to being spoken to in such a manner. A couple of hours later, Kushina returned, a smile on her face. "We've successfully delivered the scroll. The mission is a success. Can we go now?" Naruto asked, still fuming from the earlier encounter. "Yes, we're heading back to the village hidden in the leaves," Kushina confirmed. They began their journey back, the excitement of their mission's success mingling with the anticipation of returning home. The team was resting in a clearing beside a small, babbling stream in the heart of the forest of the Land of Fire. The sound of the water gurgling over rocks was soothing, and the late afternoon sun filtered through the canopy of trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground. Birds chirped merrily, and the occasional rustling of leaves added to the peaceful ambiance. Yuago was lying on her back, her hands behind her head, looking up at the sky through the gaps in the leaves. "When we get back, I'm going to spend the whole day at the hot springs. Just soaking and relaxing. Maybe get a massage too. My muscles are killing me from all this jumping around." Cholo, sitting cross-legged with his back against a tree, grinned. "I'm going to eat. Eat and eat and eat until I can't move. There's this new ramen place I've been dying to try out. All-you-can-eat buffet. It's going to be glorious." Naruto, lying on his stomach and idly drawing patterns in the dirt with a stick, perked up at the mention of food. "I'm going to go to Ichiraku Ramen and have every single type of ramen they have. Datbeo. And then maybe I'll prank some of the villagers for fun." Kushina chuckled, leaning against a rock with her arms crossed. "You kids and your simple pleasures. I'm just looking forward to a long, uninterrupted nap. And maybe catching up on some reading. I've got a few novels I've been meaning to finish." Just then, a rustling noise from the nearby bushes caught their attention. Instantly, the team snapped into defensive stances, eyes scanning the surroundings. A tense silence hung in the air, the only sound the faint rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird. Suddenly, a volley of shurikens flew towards them. Kushina's chakra chains shot out with lightning speed, deflecting the projectiles effortlessly. Another moment of silence followed, filled with a sense of foreboding. Then, they heard it, the sound of footsteps, many footsteps, approaching from all directions. Dozens upon dozens of hidden cloud shinobi emerged from the woods, their expressions grim and determined. The leader of the group, a tall man with a scar running down his cheek, smirked as he looked at the young team. Well, what do we have here? A bunch of kids led by a woman. Hidden Leaf must be scraping the bottom of the barrel to send you out. You'll regret this, mark my words. His eyes settled on Kushina, and his smirk grew wider. Ah, the vessel of the demon fox. Capturing you would be a great boon for the village hidden in the clouds. Kushina's eyes narrowed. Kids, stay together and don't engage unless someone approaches you. I'll handle this. The hidden cloud shinobi laughed derisively, and then the battle erupted. Kushina's chakra chains lashed out, her katana a blur as she fought off the attackers. The ground shook as she channeled Kyuubi's chakra, a red aura enveloping her. The hidden cloud shinobi found themselves overwhelmed by her sheer power and ferocity. Damn it! One of the shinobi cursed as he was thrown back by a powerful strike. She's a monster. Kushina's movements were a deadly dance, her chains wrapping around enemies and flinging them away, her katana slicing through their defenses. Kyuubi's chakra made her almost unstoppable, her attacks devastating. The leader of the hidden cloud shinobi began to reassess the situation. They were elite shinobi, yet they were being defeated by this woman as if they were nothing. He needed to retreat, but returning without any gain would be a disgrace. His eyes fell on Naruto, the red-headed boy in the team. From the boy's features, it was clear he was related to Kushina. In Uzumaki, capturing him would be a valuable prize for their village. Determined, he made his move towards Naruto. However, before he could reach the boy, Yuago stepped in, her katana at the ready. The leader's experienced eyes quickly calculated the odds. With a swift kick, he disarmed her, sending the katana flying. Yuago! Cholo yelled, making a hand sign. Partial expansion technique. His hands bulged and extended towards the hidden cloud shinobi. But before Cholo could reach him, Naruto finished his own hand sign. Wind style. Devastating breakthrough. The powerful wind jutsu blasted through the area, sending enemies and debris flying. Kids, Kushina panted, the Kyuubi chakra slowly fading. Run, we're outnumbered. All distract. No. Cholo shouted, his usual calm demeanor shattered. No, sensei, we won't leave you. Yuago retrieved her katana, determination etched on her face. We're in this together. Naruto grinned, though it was tinged with nervousness. Yeah, we can do this, Datbeo. Kushina sighed, knowing it was futile to argue with them. All right then, she said, her Kyuubi chakra gone. Leave this to me. Stay back and cover me. Golden chakra chains emerged from her palms once more, and she leapt back into the fray. The remaining hidden cloud shinobi attacked with renewed ferocity, but Kushina met them head-on. Her chains blocked and countered their strikes, her katana flashing in deadly arcs. Yuago, Cholo, and Naruto stayed back, deflecting projectiles and supporting their sensei with ranged attacks. Naruto's wind jutsu kept the enemies at bay, while Cholo used his expansion technique to protect his teammates. Yuago's precise strikes with her katana kept any attackers from getting too close. Despite their efforts, the hidden cloud shinobi were relentless. The leader, seeing his chance, made another move towards Naruto, but Kushina intercepted him with a powerful chain strike. The force of the blow sent him sprawling, but he quickly recovered, a look of grim determination on his face. You won't take my son. Kushina yelled, her voice echoing through the forest. The leader sneered. We'll see about that. The battle raged on, the clearing filled with the sounds of clashing metal, shouts, and the crackling of chakra. Birds scattered from the trees, and the once peaceful stream now seemed a mere background noise to the chaos unfolding around it. Naruto, Yuago, and Cholo fought with all their might, their teamwork and determination pushing them beyond their limits. Kushina's chains lashed out in all directions, a whirlwind of golden light and steel. The hidden cloud shinobi were slowly but surely being driven back, their numbers dwindling. But the fight was far from over. The leader of the hidden cloud shinobi, bloodied but unbowed, rallied his remaining men for one final assault. We're not leaving without the boy, he shouted. Kushina, breathing heavily, tightened her grip on her katana. Over my dead body. And with that, the battle reached its climax, the outcome hanging in the balance as the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the forest clearing. The leader, who had been attacked by Naruto's devastating breakthrough, now stood up, battered but not beaten. The situation changed rapidly. Fighting these leaf shinobi, kids and a woman, though they were, had proven more challenging than expected. Their teamwork and skills were formidable. Retreating was the best option, even if it was humiliating. But he had a plan. A sinister grin spread across his face as he quickly formed hand signs. Lightning style. Electromagnetic murder. He declared, electricity crackling at his fingertips. Kushina's eyes widened as she realized the danger and immediately moved to shield the kids. But then, to her shock, the lightning attack veered off course as the shinobi added a new hand sign. Split. Cholo. Everyone screamed in unison as the deadly attack honed in on him with alarming speed. Cholo's eyes shut tight, bracing for the inevitable. But before the lightning could strike, a small red blur leapt in front of him. It was Naruto. Ugh! Naruto cried out as the electricity surged through him. He fell to his knees, smoke rising from his small, trembling form. Naruto! Cholo yelled, rushing to his friend's side. Yuago stood frozen in shock. Seizing the moment, the cloud shinobi began to retreat, hoping to regroup. However, everyone gasped as they turned to see Kushina's eyes slitted like a fox, her canines elongating. She was losing control, the Kyuubi's chakra contaminating her own. But then, I am fine. The voice cut through the chaos, freezing everyone in their tracks. Kushina blinked and turned to see her boy standing beside Cholo, whose face was full of concern. Naruto, are you? Yuago's words were cut off by Naruto. Cloud Shinobi. Naruto tilted his head, his voice devoid of its usual cheerfulness. Everyone, including the enemies, felt a chill run down their spines. His eyes, they were hollow. The air around him seemed to grow heavy and ominous. Hey, Naruto, you look different, Cholo said worriedly. Perhaps. Naruto's voice was almost commanding, as if he were an old warrior with a rank that surpassed even Kushina's. You should step back, Mom. This will only take a while. Kushina blinked, but something about her son's voice compelled her to obey. She subconsciously stepped back. The cloud shinobi, now standing together, snarled. A brat thinks he can take us all at once. Even if he said that, there was no confidence in his voice. Naruto made an unfamiliar hand sign. Kushina's eyes widened in recognition. Of course she knew that sign. She had seen it once before. Kushi-chan. Gigi, are we going to die? No. Kushi-chan, Gigi's here. Now, listen, you go and hide inside the Shinju tree of our ancestors. I'm sure my niece will send people for aid. Mito Oba-chan. But won't you hide? Listen, my dear. The shadow must always be there for its origin. And as I am the Uzukage of this village, I'll be there for it till the end and beyond. She had hidden inside the tree, but even from such a distance, her Uzumaki eyes caught the glimpse of the hand sign her grandfather, Ashina Uzumaki, the man who had eradicated 7,000 shinobi in that moment, had made the very hand sign her son was making now. Kinjutsu. Naruto uttered as he held the sign. Wada de yo ni shinyu. Begone, for you have crossed the line. Then, it happened. A portal materialized above the cloud ninjas, swirling with dark energy. The shinobi were paralyzed, unable to move as a faint dark white chakra seeped from the portal, forming into a massive hand. No, it was a claw. The claw plunged into the leader's body. His eyes widened in horror before rolling back. The claw retracted, pulling out a neon-colored essence that was more than just chakra. Cholo snapped his eyes shut, unwilling to witness the horror. In 20 seconds, 39 lifeless bodies fell to the ground. The portal closed with a final, ominous hum. Naruto, Kushina said weakly as Yuago dropped to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. What? The Uzumaki art, Mom. Naruto replied quietly. I learned it from Dad's scrolls. But they both knew that wasn't true. No one survives after summoning the Shinigami without the Shinigami mask. Unless, we should head back, Kushina stated, her voice trembling. Hi, Cholo and Yuago responded in unison, their voices shaky, while Naruto gave a gentle smile. But it wasn't a smile of victory. It was a smile of sorrow and immense grief. Reset number 303. Previous timeline details. The leaf fell. Casualties 17,400. Uzumaki family failed to save either, killed by the Mizukage and Reikage. Progression none. Current reset number 304. Time of essence transfer into the body 7 years after the death of Tsukumo Hatake. I am Naruto Uzumaki. I was born on the 29th of February, 3 years after the Third Great Shinobi War, in the village hidden in the leaves. My father, Minato Namikaze, was a young and rising elite Jonin, while my mother, Kushina Uzumaki, was the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, a reserved warrior with a strength that could shake mountains. I am not a bastard, no. My mother hailed from the ancient and revered Uzumaki clan, known for their longevity and mastery of sealing techniques. My father, however, was an orphan, given the name, Namikaze, by his academy teacher. Thus, I became Naruto Uzumaki, not Naruto Namikaze, a name that carries the legacy of an entire clan on my small shoulders. In those early years, life was good, blissfully unaware of the shadows creeping at the edges of our world. I spent my days fooling around, drawing on scrolls with clumsy hands, and exploring the corners of our small home with the curiosity only a toddler possesses. War may have loomed over the village like a dark cloud, but within the walls of our home, my parents always made time for me. I remember the days when my father would come home early from his missions, his blonde hair tousled and his blue eyes sparkling with mischief. He would scoop me up into his arms, spinning me around until the world became a blur of colors, and my tiny giggles echoed through the house. Look at you, Naruto. He would say, grinning as he ruffled my hair. Growing stronger every day, just like your old man. Minato, don't make him dizzy, my mother would chide, though there was a smile on her face. She'd join us soon enough, her long red hair cascading around her like a fiery waterfall as she pretended to chase after us. Gotcha, Ebane. She'd exclaim, capturing me in a warm embrace that smelled of spices and safety. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, we would sit together on the porch. My father would hold me on his lap, pointing out the constellations in the night sky. See that one, Naruto? That's the Hokage's star. It shines the brightest because it watches over the village, just like I watch over you. I'd stare up at the sky, eyes wide with wonder, feeling the steady beat of his heart against my back. My mother would often sing to me, her voice gentle and soothing, as she rocked me to sleep. Even as a child who could barely talk, I understood that her lullabies were more than just songs. They were promises, woven into the fabric of our lives, binding us together with a love stronger than steel. There were other people in my life too, interesting, vibrant characters who would flit in and out of our home like butterflies. Jiraiya, my father's teacher and my godfather, was one of them. He was a giant of a man, with a booming laugh and a twinkle in his eye that promised adventure. Hey, Squirt! He'd call out whenever he visited, lifting me high into the air as if I weighed nothing at all. One day, you'll be even stronger than your old man. Just wait and see. Jiraiya's visits were always full of noise and chaos, but there was a warmth to his presence that made me feel safe. He'd tell me stories, tales of heroes and monsters, of battles fought and won, filling my young mind with dreams of glory. Then there were my father's students, Kakashi, Obito, and Rin. They were like older siblings to me, each with their own quirks. Kakashi was cold and aloof, his face hidden behind a mask even back then, but I could tell he cared in his own way. He'd watch over me with a detached sort of affection, occasionally patting my head or tossing me a toy when he thought no one was looking. Rin, on the other hand, was all warmth and kindness. She adored me, often cradling me in her arms and whispering sweet words that I didn't fully understand but loved all the same. You're going to grow up to be a great ninja, Naruto, she'd tell me, her eyes full of gentle encouragement. Just like your father. Obito was more of a mystery. He didn't express his emotions as openly as the others, but I could sense his affection for me in the small things. The way he'd bring me candy, or the times he'd sit with me in silence, simply keeping me company. I think, in his own quiet way, he was trying to show me that I wasn't alone. Life was good. I used to play all day, eat candies and ramen. Oh, how I loved ramen, and get cuddled by everyone around me. The world outside might have been embroiled in conflict, but for me, those early years were filled with nothing but warmth and love. Of course, being a time of war, my parents often had to leave for missions. They would be gone for a day, a week, or sometimes a month at most. I would wait for them at the doorstep, small and hopeful, my heart leaping with joy whenever they returned. In their absence, someone always looked after me, often Makoto Uchiha, who was on maternity leave at the time. She was like a second mother to me, her calm and graceful presence a comforting constant when my parents were away. Sometimes, Makoto would take me to the Uchiha district to play. I remember Shisui, a bright and energetic kid, who would run circles around me, making me laugh with his antics. There was also Mommy, an orphan who had become a close playmate. We would spend hours together, lost in the innocent games of childhood, oblivious to the tensions that simmered just beneath the surface of our world. It was a nice time. A really nice time. And now, as I sit here, alone with my thoughts, I miss every bit of it. Because all that happiness, it evaporated one fateful day when my parents returned home. Not as smiling, loving people. A 4-year-old me was playing with a 2-year-old Itachi Uchiha, Auntie Makoto's son. The air was thick with the sounds of our carefree laughter, the kind of laughter only children who know nothing of the world's darkness can produce. It was a warm day in the Uchiha courtyard, the kind of day where the sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the ground, painting a picture of serenity. The garden was meticulously maintained, the air filled with the scent of blooming flowers, mingling with the faint hint of incense that drifted from inside the house. But none of this mattered to us, our world was filled only with the joy of play. Itachi, though only 2, was already showing signs of the prodigy he would become. His small hands clumsily tried to mimic my movements as I jumped and spun around him. He followed me with wide, curious eyes, his little brow furrowing in concentration as he attempted to copy my every move. Look, Tachi! I shouted with exuberance, my voice echoing in the courtyard. I leapt from a low stone ledge with the boundless energy only a child possesses, my feet barely touching the ground before I tumbled forward. I landed awkwardly, but instead of crying, I burst into a fit of giggles, the sound pure and innocent. Itachi, determined to follow, toddled up to the ledge, his tiny legs wobbling as he prepared to jump. He stumbled as he landed, his small frame barely managing to stay upright. For a moment, he looked as if he might fall, but he steadied himself, a look of triumph crossing his face as he turned to me, expecting praise. I grinned at him, giving a playful clap, and he returned my smile, his dark eyes lighting up with happiness. In that moment, we were just two children, lost in our own little world, blissfully unaware of the shadows creeping ever closer to our innocence. But then, something shifted in the air, a presence, familiar yet strange in its timing. The sound of footsteps, so familiar to me, echoed through the courtyard. I paused, my playfulness fading as I turned towards the entrance, expecting to see someone from the Uchiha clan, perhaps Fugaku or another relative. But as the figure stepped into view, my heart leapt with unexpected joy. It was Auntie Tsunade. Her golden hair, usually so vibrant and full of life, seemed muted under the gray sky that had slowly begun to cloak the afternoon in an ominous shroud. She was a rare sight in the village, her duties often taking her far away, so seeing her now filled me with a burst of excitement. I quickly ran towards her, my small feet pattering against the cool stone, the sound of my sandals echoing in the quiet courtyard. Auntie Tsunade. I called out, my voice high with joy as I began to circle around her like a tiny whirlwind of energy. My smile was wide, my eyes sparkling with delight at her unexpected visit. But as I looked up at her, something in her expression stopped me in my tracks. Auntie Tsunade wasn't smiling. There was a deep sadness in her eyes, a sorrow so profound that it felt as though it was pulling her down into the very earth beneath her feet. Even at my young age, I could sense that something was terribly wrong. The usual warmth and strength that radiated from her seemed to have dimmed, replaced by a cold, heavy weight that made my stomach twist uncomfortably. "Na Naruto," she whispered, her voice soft and tinged with a sadness that made my heart ache. She knelt down, her strong hands that had healed so many, reached out to me, and gently, almost hesitantly, she scooped me into her arms. Usually, she would toss me into the air, making me laugh with her playful strength, but today there was no such joy. Today, she just held me close, her hand gently stroking my unruly red hair as if trying to comfort herself as much as me. I could feel her heart beating against mine, faster than usual, and I frowned, confused and worried. "Auntie, are you sad?" I asked, tilting my head to look up at her, my innocent eyes searching her face for answers. My question, spoken with all the sincerity of a child, seemed to break something inside her. Her eyes, always so strong, filled with tears, and a single tear slipped down her cheek, glittering in the dim light like a tiny crystal. Before I could reach out to wipe it away, another figure appeared in the courtyard, Auntie Makoto. She moved with the grace of a kunoichi, her presence gentle yet commanding. Makoto greeted Tsunade with a soft, concerned smile, her dark eyes filled with understanding that I couldn't grasp. "Tsunade-sama." Makoto's voice was gentle, yet there was an undercurrent of concern, as if she already knew what was troubling Tsunade but didn't want to believe it. Her gaze flickered to me, and her smile faltered. But Tsunade didn't respond immediately. She just stared at Makoto, and in that long, tense silence, something unspoken passed between them. The air around us grew thick, almost suffocating, pressing down on me with a weight I didn't understand. I shifted uncomfortably in Tsunade's arms, feeling the tension like a storm on the horizon, threatening to break. "Both?" Makoto finally asked, her voice steady, eyes narrowing as they shifted into the Sharingan. The blood-red hue of her eyes always fascinated me, but now, they seemed ominous, as if they were seeing something far beyond what was in front of them. Tsunade nodded, her face pale and drawn, as if the very act of speaking was too much for her. "Both," she confirmed, her voice carrying the weight of something terrible, something that made my heart beat faster with fear, though I didn't understand why. I was too young to grasp the meaning behind their words, but the heaviness in the air, the sorrow in their voices, it frightened me. What's wrong? I asked, looking between them, my small voice filled with confusion and growing anxiety. But neither of them answered. Instead, Makoto stepped forward, gently taking me from Tsunade's arms. Her movements were slow and deliberate, as if she were handling something incredibly fragile. I could see the sadness in her eyes too, but there was something else there, something that looked almost like resignation. Once inside the Uchiha compound, Makoto led me to a small room. The walls were adorned with simple yet elegant decorations, and the light was soft, almost dim. She opened a wooden chest and pulled out a small black kimono, the fabric smooth and cool to the touch. Let's get you dressed, Naruto, she said softly, kneeling beside me. Her hands were gentle as she helped me out of my play clothes and into the kimono. The fabric felt strange against my skin, stiff and uncomfortable, nothing like the soft clothes I was used to wearing. Wow! I look like a prince! I exclaimed, my voice filled with childlike wonder as I admired myself in the mirror. But Makoto's smile didn't reach her eyes. She nodded, but there was a deep sadness in her gaze that made me feel uneasy. She didn't say anything, just took my hand and led me back outside, where Tsunade was waiting silently by the door. The walk through the village felt different this time. The streets, usually filled with the sounds of life, laughter, conversation, the clatter of daily activities, were strangely quiet. People were staring at us as we passed, their eyes filled with something I couldn't recognize, pity, perhaps, or maybe sorrow. But I didn't understand. I was too innocent, too naive. Instead of feeling scared or worried, I grinned at them, waving as if we were on some grand adventure. Maybe they were jealous because I was being carried by the legendary Tsunade. That had to be it, right? After all, Auntie Tsunade was a hero, someone everyone looked up to. Surely, that's why they were staring. But as we continued to walk, that sense of unease in my stomach only grew. The sky had turned a dark gray, clouds gathering ominously overhead, casting the village in a somber, muted light. The air felt heavy, thick with something I couldn't name, but it made my small heart race with fear. Finally, we reached our destination, a place I had never been before. It was strange and unsettling, with tall, cold stone pillars standing in neat rows, like silent sentinels guarding something sacred. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and the sky above was a heavy gray, as if the heavens themselves were in mourning. The ground beneath my feet felt cold, even through my sandals, and a shiver ran down my spine as I looked around, trying to make sense of where we were. There were people gathered there, shinobi, villagers, people I recognized but couldn't name. They stood in small groups, speaking in hushed tones, their faces pale and drawn, all of them were wearing black clothes. I saw Uncle Tuki, the ramen guy, but he wasn't smiling like he usually did. Instead, he was crying, his shoulders shaking as he wiped his eyes with a handkerchief. Why was he crying? Ramen was supposed to make people happy, not sad. They were all standing in front of 5 wooden boxes, lined up side by side. They were large and made of dark wood, each with its lid slightly open. My small mind couldn't grasp what these boxes were for, but something about them made my heart race with fear. They stood there in a silent row, ominous and foreboding, as if they were sentinels guarding a secret too dreadful for my young mind to comprehend. The air was thick with an oppressive stillness, a kind of quiet that only the deepest sorrow could bring. Even at that tender age, I could sense that something was terribly wrong, but I couldn't quite place what it was. I felt a tightening in my chest, an instinctive urge to run away, but my curiosity kept me rooted to the spot. Tsunade set me down gently, her hands lingering on my shoulders for a moment, as if reluctant to let me go. I didn't notice the way her fingers trembled slightly as she did so, or how her eyes were red-rimmed from barely suppressed tears. My attention was fixed entirely on the strange, foreboding scene before me. The people gathered there, shinobi and villagers alike, were not their usual selves. They stood in solemn clusters, their faces pale and drawn, their eyes filled with a sorrow that made the air feel heavy and difficult to breathe. I recognized some of them, people I'd seen around the village, but today they looked like strangers to me, their expressions foreign and unsettling. It was like a dream, one where everything looked the same but felt terribly wrong. Despite the strange atmosphere, my innocent mind could not fully grasp the gravity of what was happening. I still believed that if I smiled and greeted them as I always did, things would return to normal. After all, I was the son of the Yellow Flash and Red Hot Habanero. I was being carried by Auntie Tsunade, the legendary Sanin. Surely, nothing could be wrong if she was here with me. Hey, Uncle Tuki. I called out, my voice bright and carefree as I spotted the familiar figure of the ramen shop owner. His back was turned to me, his shoulders hunched in a way that seemed unnatural for the man who always greeted me with a wide smile and a bowl of my favorite noodles. Why is everyone so sad? Did someone drop their ramen? I joked, trying to bring a bit of lightness to the situation. But Uncle Tuki didn't respond. When he turned to face me, I saw that his eyes were swollen and red, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. He quickly looked away, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand, as if ashamed to let me see him cry. My heart lurched in my chest, confusion swirling within me. I had never seen Uncle Tuki cry before. Ramen was supposed to make people happy, wasn't it? Before I could ask him again, I noticed Jiraiya standing nearby, his usual boisterous presence strangely subdued. He was watching me with an expression I had never seen on his face before, a mix of pain and something else, something I couldn't quite identify. His eyes, normally so full of life and mischief, were dull and filled with an unspeakable sorrow. Uncle Jiraiya, what's going on? I asked, my voice trembling slightly as I looked up at him. There was a knot forming in my stomach, a tight ball of fear and confusion that was slowly spreading through my entire body. Why is everyone crying? Jiraiya's gaze flicked to Tsunade, who was standing a few steps behind me, her face pale and drawn. His lips parted as if to say something, but he hesitated, glancing back at me with a look of profound regret. You didn't, did you? He asked Tsunade, his voice thick with emotion, his words laced with an unspoken dread. Tsunade didn't answer right away. She averted her gaze, her golden hair falling like a curtain over her face, hiding the tears that were streaming down her cheeks. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, strained and broken. I couldn't, she murmured, her words carrying a weight that made the air around us feel even heavier. I looked up at them, my heart pounding in my chest as my confusion turned into something darker, something more terrifying. What's going on? Why won't anyone tell me what's happening? I demanded, my voice rising with a mix of fear and frustration. But no one answered me. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating, pressing down on me until it felt like I couldn't breathe. My gaze drifted back to the wooden boxes, those strange, ominous boxes that everyone seemed to be avoiding. Something deep inside me told me that whatever was in those boxes was the key to understanding all of this. But another part of me, the part that still clung to the innocence of childhood, wanted nothing more than to run away from them, to pretend they didn't exist. But I couldn't stop myself. My small legs carried me forward, closer and closer to the first box. My heart was pounding so hard that it felt like it was going to burst out of my chest, but I kept moving, driven by a need to understand, to see what was inside. With trembling hands, I reached up and lifted the lid of the first box. My breath caught in my throat, my heart skipping a beat as I looked inside. Lying there, still and silent, was Obito. His face, once so full of life and energy, was now pale and unmoving. His eyes were covered with a white cloth, and his hands, which had always been so animated, were now resting quietly at his sides. He looked like he was just sleeping, but something deep inside me knew that wasn't the case. Obito ni, wake up. I called out, my voice trembling as I reached out to shake him. You're sleeping in the middle of the day, silly. Wake up. But he didn't move. A cold wave of fear washed over me, chilling me to the bone. I backed away from the box, my small body trembling with the realization that something was very, very wrong. But even then, I couldn't fully grasp what I was seeing. I didn't want to. I refused to believe that the boy who had always been so full of life could be gone. With trembling legs, I moved to the next box. My hands felt like they were made of lead as I lifted the lid, my heart pounding in my chest. Inside was Rin. Her face was peaceful, but there was something unnatural about the stillness of her body, something that made my stomach twist with fear. Her lips, usually curled into a gentle smile, were now motionless, and her skin was pale and cold to the touch. Rin-ne, come on. Get up. This isn't funny. I pleaded, shaking her a little harder, my voice rising in pitch as the panic began to set in. But she remained motionless, her chest not rising or falling. The reality of what I was seeing began to press down on me, but I still couldn't understand. I didn't want to understand. My legs felt heavy as I moved to the next box. The world around me was fading, the people, the sky, everything, dimming until all that was left were these boxes, these horrifying boxes. I reached the third one, my hands trembling violently as I lifted the lid. Kakashi was there, but it wasn't all of him. Just his head. His usually masked face was exposed, pale and lifeless, his eyes closed forever. The shock of seeing him like that was too much, and a scream tore from my throat before I could stop it. Kakashi ni. I screamed, my voice breaking as I gripped the edge of the box, my small body trembling with the force of my fear and grief. I see your face now. You can wake up. Please, Kakashi ni. But there was no response, only silence. Tears blurred my vision as I stumbled to the fourth box. My entire body was shaking now, my mind screaming at me to stop, to turn away, but I couldn't. I had to see. I had to know. I reached out with trembling hands, and lifted the lid of the fourth box. Inside was my mother, lying so still, so cold. Her beautiful red hair, the same shade as mine, was spread out like a halo around her head. Her face, always so full of warmth and love, was now pale, her skin as cold as ice. Mama, I whispered, reaching out to touch her cold hand, the realization finally starting to dawn on me. Please wake up, Mama, I need you. But she didn't move. She didn't open her eyes. She didn't say anything. And then, the last box. My father was there, his face calm and serene, just like I remembered. He looked like he was just sleeping, like he could wake up at any moment and smile at me, tell me everything was going to be okay. Papa, I whimpered, my small hands shaking as I reached out to him. Please wake up, Papa. I need you. Please. I shook him harder and harder, my desperation growing with every passing second, but he remained still, his body cold and lifeless. They were all gone. The world around me began to close in, the weight of the truth crashing down on me like a tidal wave. Wake up! I yelled. Wake up, Datbaya! I beat my fists against the wooden boxes, screaming for them to wake up, to come back to me. But they were gone. And there was nothing I could do to bring them back. A man with bandages wrapped around his face stepped forward, his voice cold and emotionless. They are dead, my boy, he said, his words slicing through the air like a knife. Killed by Iwa, Kumo, and Kiri. They are never coming back. Kill. They are dead, killed. The man's words cut through me like a blade, sharp and unyielding, their meaning settling deep into my chest. Dead. Killed. Never coming back. These words swirled around in my young mind, each one hitting me like a hammer, driving the cold, hard truth into my heart. Dead. No. No, that couldn't be right. They were just sleeping. They had to be. People wake up from sleep. They come back. They always do. But the man's voice was so certain, so final, that it shook the very foundation of my understanding. My small mind grappled with the concept of death, a dark, terrifying reality that I had never before been forced to confront. And in that moment, the world around me seemed to tilt, spinning out of control as I stood there, a helpless child, in front of those cold, unfeeling boxes. Jiraiya, who had been standing nearby, took a step forward, his face etched with grief. He looked at me with eyes full of sorrow and regret, his usual playful demeanor completely stripped away. For a moment, it seemed like he might reach out to me, to offer some kind of comfort, but then he hesitated, his hand faltering in the air as if he didn't know how to help. Tsunade, he began, his voice thick with emotion, but she didn't respond. She stood there, her head bowed, her shoulders trembling slightly. The strong, fearless Tsunade who I had always admired now looked small and broken, a shell of the person I thought I knew. The man with the bandages, someone I would later come to know as Danzo, stepped closer, his cold gaze fixed on me. His presence was suffocating, his words even more so. Do you understand, boy? Do you understand what has been taken from you? He asked, his tone devoid of any warmth or compassion. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat was tight, my chest heaving as I tried to make sense of everything. My parents, my friends, they were all gone. Taken from me. Stolen by people I had never met, for reasons I couldn't begin to comprehend. The world that had once been so bright and full of life now felt empty, dark, and terrifying. Jiraiya's eyes widened as he realized something. Danzo. Stop this. Get away from him. Don't you want vengeance? Danzo finished, ignoring Jiraiya. And then, something inside me snapped. The grief, the confusion, the helplessness, it all began to churn inside me, growing and twisting until it became something else entirely. A dark, seething anger welled up from deep within me, a rage that was too big, too powerful for my small body to contain. Kill, kill, kill them all. The words erupted from me in a frenzied chant, my voice rising to a frantic pitch as I gave into the storm of emotions swirling inside me. It was all too much, the sorrow, the pain, the loss. I didn't know how to deal with it, didn't know how to process it. All I knew was that I wanted it to stop. I wanted to make the people who did this suffer, to make them feel the same pain that was tearing me apart. Golden chains, forged from pure chakra, burst from my body, thrashing wildly in all directions. They crackled with a terrifying energy, glowing with a golden hue that pulsed with my rage. The chakra surrounding me, usually calm and controlled, had turned into a violent, swirling storm of gray energy, lashing out at anything within its reach. The people around me recoiled in fear, their expressions shifting from sorrow to alarm. I could hear their panicked voices, but they sounded distant, like echoes in a tunnel. All I could focus on was the raw, burning anger that was consuming me from the inside out. Tsunade's voice cut through the chaos, filled with a desperation I had never heard from her before. Naruto, stop. Please, stop. She pleaded, her hands reaching out towards me, but I was beyond hearing, beyond reason. The darkness had taken hold, and it was driving me to a place I didn't know how to escape. Jiraiya moved quickly, stepping in front of Tsunade, his hands forming rapid seals as he prepared to subdue me. We have to stop him before he kills himself. He shouted, his voice tense with urgency. But even as he moved to restrain me, I felt something deep within me stirring, responding to my pain and anger. The world around me seemed to shift, the air growing thick with a malevolent energy. The chakra chains lashed out, striking the ground with such force that the earth beneath me cracked and splintered. But amidst the chaos, a faint, distant voice called out to me. It was weak, barely audible, but it was enough to make me pause, to make me hesitate. Ru, the voice was familiar, comforting, and it tugged at something deep inside me, something that still clung to the light, that still remembered the love and warmth I had once known. For a moment, the rage faltered, the chakra chains slowing their wild thrashing as I strained to hear the voice, to hold on to it. Please, don't go. And then, just as quickly as it had come, the darkness began to recede, the malevolent energy dissipating as the voice grew stronger, more insistent. Hold on, Naruto, don't let it take you. The chakra chains retracted, slowly fading back into my body as the storm of energy around me began to calm. My breathing was ragged, my body trembling with exhaustion. When the last of the chakra chains had disappeared, I collapsed to my knees, the weight of everything that had happened crashing down on me. Tears streamed down my face, hot and unchecked, as the reality of my loss finally sank in. They were gone. My parents, my friends, they were gone. And no amount of anger, no amount of power, could bring them back. Tsunade was beside me in an instant, pulling me into her arms, her embrace tight and comforting. I could feel her tears on my skin, hear her soft sobs as she held me close. I'm so sorry, Naruto, I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice choked with grief. Jiraiya knelt beside us, his face etched with sorrow. He placed a hand on my head, his touch gentle, and for the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. We'll get through this, kid, somehow, we'll get through this, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. But even in that moment, I continued to chant. I'll destroy them all. I can never forgive those who took away my precious people. Danzo was successful. He had effectively cultivated a monster that would annihilate everything. After that day, the sun never quite shone the same way for me. It wasn't that the world had darkened. Rather, it was as if the light had dimmed within me, swallowed by the abyss that had taken root in my heart. From that moment forward, there was only one goal, one driving force that pushed me forward through the haze of my existence: vengeance. I sought out Jiraiya, the man who had been appointed by the village elders as my mentor, though it was clear that he accepted this role with great reluctance. The day I approached him, my eyes burning with a fury that belied my youth, I made my intentions brutally clear. Teach me everything you know, I demanded, my voice steady and cold, a voice that no child should possess. It was the voice of someone who had already seen too much, suffered too much. Jiraiya looked at me, his gaze heavy with sadness and something else, perhaps it was fear, perhaps pity. And what will you do with this knowledge? He asked, though I could tell he already knew the answer. I didn't hesitate. I will kill them all. There was a moment of silence, a long, unbearable pause where the weight of my words hung in the air like a death sentence. Jiraiya sighed deeply, as though the very act of breathing had become a burden, and though his expression betrayed his reluctance, he could not deny me. The village elders had seen to that. And so, despite his reservations, he agreed to teach me. The knowledge he imparted was vast, covering every aspect of the shinobi arts, from ninjutsu to taijutsu, from sealing techniques to the arcane mysteries of the sage arts. But I was impatient. I was relentless. I needed more, faster, better. That's when I discovered the power of the shadow clones, a technique that allowed me to train 1,000 times over, the experiences and memories of each clone returning to me upon their dispelling. For 7 years, I trained with 1,000 clones every day, each day becoming 7,000 days, each year stretching into the equivalent of centuries of experience. By the time I was 11, I had amassed more knowledge, more skill, and more power than the legendary Sannin combined. Yet it still wasn't enough. How could it be enough when my goal was to bring entire nations to their knees? The hunger for power gnawed at me, an insatiable beast that refused to be sated. Even as I surpassed my mentors, even as I mastered the highest levels of the sage arts, there was always a whisper in the back of my mind, a dark voice reminding me that I was not yet strong enough. The war dragged on for 5 years after my parents' deaths, and in the end, Konoha was left broken, crippled by debt, and gripped by famine. I watched as the village crumbled, as the proud shinobi who once protected it became nothing more than hollow shells of their former selves. And yet, none of it mattered to me. My heart had already turned to stone. I sought out more power, more techniques, more ways to destroy those who had taken everything from me. The sage arts were not enough. Jiraiya's teachings were not enough. I left for Mount Myoboku, the sacred land of the toads, where I trained under Fukasaku, the wise and ancient sage. But even there, I could not be satisfied with the traditional pace of learning. I created more clones, thousands of them, each one undergoing the same rigorous training, each one contributing to my ever-growing reservoir of strength. By the time I returned from Mount Myoboku, I had accumulated 1,000 years of training in the sage arts. Jiraiya tried to counsel me during those years, speaking of the emptiness that revenge would bring, of the hollowness that would consume me once my enemies lay dead at my feet. I never paid him any heed. His words were meaningless to me, hollow echoes in the vast chasm of my soul. My purpose was singular, my path unwavering. As I grew stronger, I became more withdrawn, more isolated from the world around me. By the age of 13, I had already surpassed the third Hokage, but still, it wasn't enough. I delved into the sealing arts, mastering every nuance that Jiraiya had to offer. With that knowledge, I eventually cracked the secret of my father's Hiraishin formula, the flying thunder god technique that had made him a legend. But even that accomplishment brought me no joy, only a grim satisfaction that I was one step closer to my goal. My interactions with others dwindled to almost nothing. Makoto Uchiha, my mother's old friend, would sometimes come to my home, cooking meals for me out of a sense of duty or perhaps pity. She would sit with me, her presence warm and comforting, but I never reciprocated. I would eat in silence, my mind elsewhere, focused solely on the training that awaited me. Makoto would occasionally try to engage me in conversation, her voice gentle and filled with concern. Naruto, she would say softly, watching me with those kind, dark eyes, you can't keep going on like this. You need to rest, to take care of yourself. But her words fell on deaf ears. I would nod absently, barely acknowledging her presence before retreating back into the darkness of my mind. The world outside, the people around me, all of it had become irrelevant, mere distractions from my ultimate purpose. By the time I was 15, I had surpassed even my father in speed, the Hiraishin technique flowing through me as naturally as breathing. But still, it wasn't enough. The chakra chains, a legacy from my mother, were the last barrier between me and the full realization of my power. I had no one to teach me how to control them, no one who understood their full potential. And so, I taught myself, through relentless trial and error, through pain and blood and sheer force of will. Shisui Uchiha, my childhood friend, would sometimes visit me, though our friendship had long since withered away. Now, he was little more than a sparring partner, someone to test my ever-growing strength against. Itachi, too, would come by on occasion, his eyes filled with a mixture of respect and wariness. He admired my power, but he could never understand my ambitions, my burning need for vengeance. It was around this time that the village began to whisper, to acknowledge the truth that had become undeniable. I was the strongest human alive. My power had surpassed all others, eclipsing even the most revered legends of my time. Yet there was no fanfare, no celebration of my achievements. The villagers looked at me with a mixture of awe and fear, and they knew better than to try and stop me when, one day, I simply left. I was never an official ninja. The village had never branded me with the headband or bound me with the chains of loyalty. I had been an orphan, a pariah, and now, I was something else entirely, a force of nature, a storm that could not be contained. And so, when I walked out of Konoha's gates, no one dared to follow. They all knew what was coming. I was about to annihilate the elemental nations. It was a sunny autumn day in Iowa, the kind of day that makes you forget the darkness that once stained the world. The leaves were just beginning to turn, their edges tinged with the colors of fire, reds, oranges, and golds, that danced in the gentle breeze. The streets were alive with the laughter of children and the warm chatter of merchants as they peddled their wares. Life was good for the people of Iowa. It was good for everyone, really. The last war had ended in their favor, and Konoha, once the strongest of the 5 great Shinobi nations, had suffered a crushing defeat. Many of Konoha's powerful shinobi had fallen, and the village, once a mighty force, was now a shadow of its former self. Years had passed since then, and the memory of bloodshed had faded, replaced by a tenuous peace that everyone was eager to believe would last forever. Little Kiko, a girl of no more than 7, was oblivious to the shadows that lurked beneath the surface of that peace. Her world was small, confined to the streets and fields of Iowa, where she spent her days playing and exploring, her imagination transforming every nook and cranny into a new adventure. She was a lively child, her dark hair always tangled from the wind, her cheeks flushed with the joy of running free. Today, she was playing a game of chase with her grandfather, a kindly old man whose back had grown stooped with age but whose spirit remained as youthful as ever. He was her favorite playmate, always ready to indulge her whims, whether it was pretending to be a fierce monster or a gallant knight. Grandpa, you can't catch me. Kiko giggled, her laughter a bright, tinkling sound that echoed through the quiet streets. She darted around a corner, her small feet barely touching the ground, and glanced back to see her grandfather shuffling after her, his face creased with a smile. Oh, you think so, do you? He called out, his voice wheezing slightly but full of affection. Just you wait, little Kiko, I'll catch you yet. Kiko squealed with delight and ran faster, her heart pounding with the thrill of the chase. She was sure she could outrun him. After all, she was young and fast, and he was old and slow. But the old man was cunning, he knew the streets better than anyone, and he took a shortcut through an alley, emerging just in front of her. Gotcha! He exclaimed, sweeping her up into his arms as she shrieked with laughter. Grandpa, no fair. Kiko protested, though she was grinning from ear to ear. She wriggled in his grasp, trying to escape, but he held her tight, his laughter mingling with hers. All's fair in love and war, little one, he said, setting her down gently. His eyes twinkled with mischief, but there was also a deep, abiding love in his gaze as he looked at her, this precious grandchild who had brought so much light into his life. Kiko was about to suggest another game when a low, rumbling sound interrupted her thoughts. It was faint at first, just a distant murmur, but it grew louder with each passing second, until it became impossible to ignore. The sound seemed to resonate through the air, vibrating in her chest, filling her with a strange, unexplainable dread. The old man's smile faltered, and he slowly lowered Kiko to the ground, his eyes narrowing as he listened. He knew that sound all too well. It was the summons, an urgent call that no shinobi could ignore. Kiko, stay here, he said, his voice suddenly serious, all traces of playfulness gone. I have to go. Grandpa. Kiko looked up at him, her heart squeezing in her chest. She didn't understand what was happening, but she could feel the fear creeping into her bones, the same fear that now clouded her grandfather's eyes. What's wrong? Where are you going? The old man didn't answer her. He couldn't. His mind was racing, 1,000 terrible possibilities flashing through his thoughts. Without another word, he turned and hurried towards the center of the village, where he knew the other shinobi would be gathering. Kiko stood frozen for a moment, watching him go, her small hands clenched into fists at her sides. She didn't know what to do. She wanted to follow him, but she was too afraid. And yet, the thought of staying behind, alone, was even more terrifying. So, she did the only thing she could think of, she ran after him. Kiko's legs pumped furiously as she chased after her grandfather, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She followed him through the winding streets, past familiar shops and homes, until they reached the small shop owned by her father, a civilian who had never known the life of a shinobi. Her grandfather was already inside, talking to her father in hushed, hurried tones. Kekkei hesitated at the door, peeking inside, her heart thudding in her chest. "What's going on, father?" her father was saying, his voice tense. "Why have all the shinobi been called back so suddenly?" The old man looked around the shop as if the very walls might be listening before he answered, his voice low and grim. "There's been an invasion. An invasion," her father repeated, his brow furrowing in confusion. "But, how? Who would dare attack us now, after all these years of peace?" The old man's face darkened, and he glanced down at the floor, his hands trembling slightly. "It's not an army," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's only one man." Her father stared at him, incredulous. "One man? And you're all this afraid? If it's just one man, how dangerous can he be?" The old man looked up sharply, his eyes flashing with a fear that Kekkei had never seen before. "You don't understand," he said, his voice cracking with the weight of his words. "This man, he's not like anything we've ever faced. He's an Uzumaki." Kekkei's breath caught in her throat at the name. She didn't know much about the Uzumaki clan, but she had heard the stories, the whispers that passed between the adults when they thought she wasn't listening. The Uzumaki were known for their incredible chakra reserves and their mastery of sealing techniques, but there was something else about them, something dark and terrible that no one ever spoke of directly. The very mention of the name seemed to send a chill through the room. "An Uzumaki," her father repeated, his voice now tinged with unease. "But, what could one Uzumaki do that would have you all so terrified?" The old man swallowed hard, his hands shaking as he wiped a bead of sweat from his brow. "He destroyed Kumo," he said, his voice hollow with disbelief. "Alone. He laid waste to the entire village. It took him 3 days of non-stop fighting. And when it was over, there was nothing left." Her father's face paled, the color draining from his cheeks as the gravity of his father's words sank in. "But, Kumo is a powerful village," he stammered, his voice trembling. "They're not weaklings. How could one man?" "He did it," the old man said, his voice growing more frantic as he spoke. "He gouged out the eyes of every Kumo shinobi. Every single one. They say it was revenge for something that happened during the last war, something to do with an Uchiha friend of his. He crippled the entire Lightning Country, and he leveled Kiri in a single day. He beheaded everyone, shinobi, civilians, it didn't matter to him. All for revenge." Kekkei's small hands trembled as she clung to the doorframe, her eyes wide with terror. She couldn't comprehend the full horror of what her grandfather was saying, but she could feel it in the pit of her stomach, a sick, twisting fear that made her want to run and hide. And now, the old man's voice dropped to a whisper, his eyes haunted as he looked at his son. "Now, his next target is Iwa." A heavy silence fell over the room, the air thick with dread. Kekkei's heart pounded in her chest, her mind racing as she tried to make sense of it all. Iwa. Why would anyone want to attack their village? It didn't make any sense, unless. Why would he come here? Her father asked, his voice hoarse with fear. What reason could he possibly have? There's a rumor, the old man said, his voice trembling, that Iwa shinobi were the ones who killed his father and mother. So now, he's coming for us. Kekkei's breath hitched in her throat, her eyes wide with terror. The thought of this man, this monster, coming to their village filled her with a fear so deep and primal that she could barely breathe. Her legs felt like they were made of lead, rooted to the spot as the full weight of what her grandfather was saying crashed down on her. Her father's face was ashen, his eyes wide with disbelief. Father, what do we do? We can't fight someone like that, we'll be slaughtered. The old man's voice trembled as he continued, we have to run, now, before it's too late. There's no other choice. We can't face him, we'd be throwing our lives away if we tried. Kiko's father looked around the small shop that had been in their family for generations. The shelves were lined with goods that he and his wife had spent years collecting, each item carefully chosen, each one representing a piece of their life. To leave it all behind, to run like cowards, it felt like abandoning everything they'd worked for, everything they'd believed in. But the fear in his father's eyes was undeniable, and deep down, he knew that this was no ordinary threat. Pack what you can carry, the old man said, urgently tightening his voice. We need to leave before nightfall. Kiko, who had been standing in the doorway, felt her world spinning out of control. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she could sense the terror that gripped the adults. Her grandfather, who was always strong and unshakable, was scared, truly scared, and that frightened her more than anything. Grandpa, she whispered, her voice small and quivering. What's going to happen to us? The old man turned to her, his face softening as he saw the fear in her wide eyes. He knelt down and took her small hands in his grip firm but gentle. Kiko, my sweet girl, he began, his voice heavy with sorrow, we're going on a little trip, okay? Somewhere safe. But we need to go quickly, and you need to be very brave for me. Kiko nodded, though tears were already welling up in her eyes. She didn't want to go anywhere, she wanted to stay in her home, with her friends, with everything she knew. But the look in her grandfather's eyes told her that there was no choice. Something terrible was coming, something that even grown-ups were afraid of. Before anyone could say another word, a sharp, piercing sound rang out, splitting the air like a knife. Kiko jumped, her heart leaping into her throat. It was the siren, the one that signaled the village was under attack. The sound was so loud, so shrill, that it seemed to shake the very ground beneath her feet. Listen, citizens of Iowa. A voice boomed from the village walls, echoing through the streets. Kiko and her family instinctively looked up, their eyes drawn to the towering barrier that surrounded their village, the last line of defense between them and whatever lay beyond. The voice continued, growing more frantic, more desperate with each passing second. The Red Reaper is here. Please head to. The voice was abruptly cut off, as if snatched away by an unseen force. Kiko's breath caught in her throat as a deathly silence fell over the village, the siren's wail lingering in the air like the last cry of a dying man. Her small hands clenched tighter around her grandfather's, seeking comfort, seeking reassurance that everything would be okay. But no one moved. No one spoke. They were all frozen, paralyzed by fear. Then, out of the stillness, something shifted, a flash of red, so quick and so sudden that Kiko almost thought she'd imagined it. But the way her grandfather stiffened beside her, the way his grip tightened around her hand, told her that it was real. Terrifyingly real. Kiko's eyes widened as she watched in horror. The gatekeeper, who had stood watch over the village for as long as she could remember, suddenly lurched forward, his body convulsing as a spray of blood erupted from his throat. He gasped, a wet, choking sound that made Kiko's stomach turn. And then, just as suddenly, he fell, tumbling from the high wall to the ground below with a sickening thud. The village erupted into chaos. People screamed, mothers clutching their children to their chests as they ran for cover. Shinobi, once the proud defenders of Iowa, now scrambled in every direction, their faces twisted in terror. And standing above it all, perched atop the wall like a vengeful specter, was the man they all feared, the Red Reaper. Kiko had never seen anything like him. He was tall and lean, his body draped in a long, crimson cloak that billowed around him like a cloud of blood. His hair, a shocking red, cascaded down his back in wild, unruly waves, catching the light in a way that made it seem to glow. But it was his eyes that truly terrified her, cold, lifeless orbs that seemed to bore into her soul, promising nothing but death. The Red Reaper moved with a grace that belied his lethal intent, jumping from the wall and landing silently on the ground below. In his hand, He held a weapon. No, not a weapon, Kiko realized with growing horror, but several small objects that gleamed ominously in the sunlight. Before anyone could react, he flung them into the crowd. For a split second, there was only silence, the calm before the storm. And then, as if on cue, the objects exploded in a brilliant flash of red, followed by the unmistakable roar of 1,000 screams. Bodies flew through the air, disintegrating into nothing but ash and blood, the ground itself shaking with the force of the blasts. Rasengan, the Red Reaper whispered, his voice cold and detached, as if he were merely commenting on the weather. Kiko watched, rooted to the spot, as the world around her descended into madness. The once peaceful streets were now awash with blood, the air thick with the acrid stench of burning flesh. People were running, falling, dying, their screams of agony filling her ears, drowning out every other sound. Her grip tightened on her grandfather's hand, her mind screaming at her to move, to run, to do something, anything, but her body refused to obey. She could only watch as the Red Reaper moved closer, his eyes scanning the carnage with a cold, emotionless gaze. Grandpa. Dad. Let's. Kiko's voice was a desperate plea, barely more than a whisper, but it was lost in the chaos around her. And then, just as she turned to look at them, her heart nearly stopped in her chest. Her father and grandfather, who had stood beside her moments ago, were no longer there. Instead, she saw them slump to the ground, their bodies still, unmoving. Kiko's breath caught in her throat as her eyes widened in disbelief. It couldn't be, this couldn't be real. But there, in their chests, were two gaping, ragged holes where their hearts should have been, blood pouring out in thick, dark rivers. Her legs gave out beneath her, and she collapsed to the ground, her small hands clutching at the dirt as her vision blurred with tears. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, the only thing she could feel was the icy grip of terror closing around her heart, squeezing tighter and tighter until it threatened to crush her completely. No, she whispered, her voice choked with grief, with fear, with the overwhelming weight of everything she had just witnessed. No, no, no. But the Red Reaper didn't care. He stepped over the bodies as if they were nothing more than obstacles in his path, his cold eyes never once leaving his true target, the heart of Iwa, where he would bring his vengeance down upon them all. Kiko's world spun around her, the sounds of death and destruction fading into the background as the truth settled in. She was alone. Completely, utterly alone. And the Red Reaper was coming for them all. But she didn't feel fear. She was panicking, true. But she was angry. Naruto stood atop the highest peak overlooking Iwa, his breath coming in ragged gasps, though it wasn't from exhaustion. The air was thick with the acrid stench of burning flesh and the sickly sweet scent of blood. The village, once bustling with life, now lay in ruins, a desolate wasteland littered with the mangled remains of its people. The earth itself seemed to weep, the crimson rivers of blood winding their way through the shattered remnants of homes and lives. His red hair, wild and untamed, clung to his sweat-slicked skin as the wind howled around him, carrying with it the echoes of the dying. It was a sound he had grown accustomed to over these past days, yet it still gnawed at the edges of his sanity. He could feel it, something deep inside him, twisting and coiling like a serpent, hissing venomous words that urged him to continue, to destroy, to obliterate every last shred of life that dared to defy him. Naruto had unleashed hell upon Kumo, an army of his shadow clones in sage mode descending like locusts upon the village. The Kumo Nin were formidable. Killer Bee and I, their most powerful warriors, had fought valiantly. Even Darui, with his calm precision, had proven a worthy adversary. But they were nothing against Naruto's unyielding fury. He had torn through their ranks with a single-minded determination, gouging out their eyes one by one, relishing the feel of their life force ebbing away beneath his hands. It had taken 3 days, 3 long, agonizing days of relentless battle, but in the end, every last one of them was dead. 25,000 shinobi and 50,000 civilians, all reduced to corpses, their eyes blank and lifeless, just as they had left Obito. From Kumo, he had moved on to Kiri, slaughtering without pause, without mercy. The memory of Kakashi's beheading had fueled his rage, and he had repaid the mist with the same cruel fate. He beheaded them all, men, women, children. The blood ran in rivers, staining the land, turning the once proud hidden mist village into a charnel house. It took him a day. Just one day to wipe Kiri off the map, to extinguish every last ember of life within its borders. Now, he stood in the ruins of Iowa, the last of the great nations that had wronged him, that had taken everything from him. The Earth Daimyo had been the first to fall, his life snuffed out as easily as a candle in the wind. Naruto had left a trail of destruction in his wake, carving a path through the country, through the very heart of Iowa itself. There had been no challenge, no resistance that could slow him, let alone stop him. His Rasengan had torn through their defenses, reducing walls and bodies alike to nothing but dust and ash. The Hiraishin, perfected through years of obsessive training, allowed him to strike with blinding speed, a red flash that heralded death. He was everywhere and nowhere, a vengeful god came to punish those who had dared to hurt him. The battle had lasted 5 minutes, just 5 minutes to kill thousands, to turn a serene village into a barren wasteland. The screams of the dying had faded to a dull roar in his ears, drowned out by the pounding of his own heart, by the overwhelming rage that consumed him. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. Onoki, the old Tsuchikage, had been the last to stand against him. The ancient shinobi's eyes had burned with a mix of fear and defiance as he faced the monster that Naruto had become. The dust release, a fearsome technique that could disintegrate anything it touched, had been Onoki's final gambit. But Naruto was faster, stronger, more ruthless. He had dodged every attack, his movements a blur of red and gold. You bastard, Onoki had rasped, his voice cracking with age and the strain of battle. You've destroyed everything, everything. My village, my people, why? Why would you do this? Naruto's eyes had been cold, devoid of any emotion as he struck, driving a Rasengan into Onoki's chest, feeling the old man's ribcage shatter beneath the force of his attack. The Tsuchikage's eyes had widened in pain and disbelief, the breath leaving his lungs in a ragged gasp as he collapsed to the ground, his life ebbing away. You took my family, Naruto had whispered, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. You took everything from me. This is justice. Onoki had died with a curse on his lips, his last breath a whisper of hatred and regret. But Naruto didn't care. He had stood over the body of the fallen kage, his heart a hollow, aching void. There was no satisfaction, no peace, only the endless, gnawing hunger for more destruction, more death. He had scanned the wasteland, his eyes searching for any sign of life, for any straggler who might have escaped his wrath. But there was nothing, only the dead and dying, the broken remnants of a once proud nation. It should have been enough. It should have been over. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it, a small movement, a flicker of life amidst the carnage. He turned, his hand already moving to form a Rasengan, ready to snuff out the last vestige of resistance. A pebble, small and insignificant, came hurtling towards him. Naruto caught it effortlessly, his eyes narrowing as he looked for the source. And there she was, a little girl, her brown hair matted with dirt and blood, her eyes wide with rage and hatred. She was trembling, her small hands clenched into fists as she glared at him with a fury that belied her fragile frame. Naruto threw a kunai at her, landing it on her chest, making her fall on the ground with a small thud. All, kill you, she tried to stand, throwing another pebble at him. Naruto frowned, his hand tightening around the pebble as he prepared to finish her off. She was nothing, a mere child, a speck of dust in the grand scheme of things. But her eyes, those eyes. All, kill you, the girl whispered, her voice trembling with fear and anger. She stumbled forward, her legs barely holding her weight, but she kept her gaze fixed on him, defiant to the end. Naruto hesitated, his hand faltering as he took in her words. It was absurd, she was dying, bleeding out from a wound that she couldn't possibly survive. And yet, she still clung to that impossible hope, that belief that she could somehow hurt him, stop him, kill him. He raised his kunai, ready to put her out of her misery. It would be a mercy, a kindness that she didn't deserve, but he would give it to her anyway. But then, as he looked into her eyes, he saw something that made his blood run cold. "I'll kill you," she repeated, her voice growing weaker with each word. "I'll kill you." It wasn't the words that stopped him, it was the look in her eyes. The pure, unbridled rage, the burning desire for vengeance. It was a look he knew all too well, a look he had seen every day in the mirror. The hatred, the fury, the need to make those who had wronged him suffer. It was the exact same as his own. Naruto's breath hitched in his throat, his vision swimming as the world seemed to tilt around him. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing in his ears like the tolling of a death knell. The kunai slipped from his grasp, clattering to the ground with a dull thud. No, this couldn't be happening. This wasn't right. He was the one who was wronged. He was the one who had suffered, who had lost everything. He was the one who was supposed to make them pay. But as he looked at the girl, as he saw the hatred in her eyes, he realized with a sickening lurch that he had become the very thing he had sworn to destroy. The world spun around him, the ground seemed to heave beneath his feet. His breath came in short, ragged gasps, his chest tightening with a panic that he hadn't felt in years. His vision blurred, the image of the girl, of the dead, of the ruined village merging into one nightmarish blur. His hands trembled, his fingers curling into fists as he tried to steady himself, to hold on to the last shreds of his sanity. But it was no use. The walls were closing in around him, the weight of his actions crashing down on him with unbearable force. He could feel it, the crushing guilt, the overwhelming horror of what he had done. He had killed them all. He had destroyed everything. Naruto's knees buckled, and he collapsed to the ground, his hands clawing at the earth as he tried to breathe, tried to think, but couldn't. He had killed more than 200,000 people. Goog. With a sickening yell, he disappeared in a flash of red. Kiko would never know this, but her actions had rewritten the fate of the shinobi world. "I'll kill you," Kiko whispered into the air as the remaining embers of her life faded. So friends, this was episode 1 of this epic time travel adventure. If you enjoyed it and want episode 2 soon, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also comment down your thoughts. If Naruto could change just one event from the future, what do you think he should save first? I'll see you in the next episode.